Egg.
We got married under the Golden Gate, then we got drunk in the upper Haight. It was a sunny day, all our friends got laid, and when we got a little older, we moved away. Took I-80 to New York City. It's a long damn way, but it sure is pretty. We ran out of gas near Colfax and delivered our first child 9 months after that. And I just called to say, I know you're always sitting in the barrio waiting.
Egg.
There will come a day, and it'll be easier to fly away than it will be to stay.
Egg.
Lived in a New York studio till we left the city for a modest home. A Springsteen song, a whole life long. A breeze that lifts your head once before it's gone. Time will come and shift its way till life learns Bootsie's birthday cake. And when I die, I'll see your face in a sundress on a Saturday. Oh, far away.
Egg. Egg.
And I just called to say, I know you're always sitting in the barrio waiting.
Egg.
I know that there will
Egg.
come a day, and it'll be easier to fly away than it will be to stay.
Schoontel 2 pet, schoontel 2 pet, schoontel 2 pet. Schoontel 2 creature, schoontel 2 creature, schoontel 2 creature.
Egg. Egg.
Schoontel 2 ki Pirina, schoontel 2 ki Pirina, schoontel 2 ki Pirina.
Egg.
Let's
Egg.
go.
Egg. Egg.
Twee.
Egg.
Hello. Hello. Hello, everyone. Hello.
Ja, ieder keer.
Hello, everyone. We're the hyper elite hackers. That's us. That's our title. That's our team name. If you select us, ow.
I've hacked my microphone to bits. That's why I sound like this.
You're so good at this. If you select us together in like one of the Mario parties or Mario and Sonic games, as in duos, then that's the name you get. The hyper elite hackers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Superstar Sluggers, for multi-team captains. That's what you get.
It's true. I completely did not register that game existed until yesterday when it was in a video that I watched.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Baseball is,
Sorry.
or is it baseball? Yeah, baseball isn't doesn't have a lot of presence in my corner of the world.
That would make sense. I had a moment of bring it just because I really like that game for one. But for other, my buddy, I went to a party that they were hosting, and they were like, "Oh, we could play Mario Party, Superstar Sluggers, Mario Kart." And I was like, "Whoa, that exists! Superstar Sluggers! I forgot about that." And then they showed me their modded Mario Kart Wii that they had, and we played on the Twin Peaks track. It was pretty great.
What? That's really good. I want to see that track now, actually.
It was pretty wild. It was like we were playing, and I was like, my roommate was like, "Oh man, no Funky Kong." And they were like, "Wait, let's play the modded version I have on my Wii." And they close it and open up the Mario Kart Wii modded version with the really shitty Photoshop backgrounds I love a lot.
Right? Yes.
And they were like, "Check it out. It's Twin Peaks track, and also you can play as Funky Kong."
Woo! All is
Best thing I ever
well. She's Kid, she's Burst, and they're the 2000s internet sisters. Kitten Burst.
So true.
That's so real. It's
true.
us.
I am Kid.
I am Burst. The burst of power when I punch people, and you're
So
called
true.
Kit because it's a your name.
Smiles.
Yeah.
I'm gonna mute a little bit occasionally. I'm finishing off a bowl of s'mores cereal. I'm on a time limit here.
That's okay. It's all right. It's okay. Good luck. Don't let them get too mushy. But yeah, sorry we're out. Sorry we're just a little bit later today, gang. Punkin and I were too busy talking about Bluey, which is the show I've started watching. And it's absolutely delightful. I actually really like it. I'm glad this exists and that it's popular and the kids like it so much because it's very, very nice and cute. The only reason I know about Mario Super Sluggers is because Donkey Kong uses a boxing glove instead of a baseball bat and just fucking punches the ball instead of swinging, which is really funny to me. Me too, dude. That's how I play all sports. Even like golf. You just punch the ball.
Do you think there's a guy out there who, like, he sees Donkey Kong and he has like a Patrick Bateman, like Tyler Durden moment where he's like, just like me for real with Donkey Kong? I think this guy that I invented in my head is really funny conceptually.
I'd have to assume that such a person exists. I think there's two kinds of people that think of this. One are like toxic masculinity guys that just see like, oh, he's a big ape. Just like me for real. He has all the bananas and gets the girl, you know?
Yeah.
And then there's the other people that are like, he's a big nice monkey man. He loves his family, just like me, you know? Like.
Yeah. Rise of the Kong males. Are you a Kong male? Or are you a cool kid?
Microlovens rabbit geeft het in sub toe best vriend maakt man.
That's really good. Also wait.
Rabbit geeft het in sub toe.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we're gonna get a bunch of these now. Oops.
Microlovens rabbit geeft het in sub toe bandje
Let's see. Thank you very much to AOL and Polar Stars and Vex Fidel and Green Clonk and My Dungeon Gal and Deaga and Dunlop and Michael's Rabbit for your subscriptions and gift subs and stuff. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate that. Psychic advertiser moment. I seriously got an ad for a new Planet of the Apes movie when I opened the stream a few minutes ago. Oh.
No, I did too.
Oh,
I was like,
damn. Oh, fuck. Dude, they know, dude. They got the future prediction sci-fi bullshit. It's real.
It's fucked up.
We're never safe anymore. This is why we have to play Kitten Burst and save the internet so they can't take it and turn it into this.
Yeah,
you know?
I've never understood the appeal of the Planet of the Apes movies. I feel like they got that one good one, and after that, it's like, well, it's monkeys talking.
Yeah, I feel like it felt very much. I haven't seen any of them, I will say. I saw the Simpsons episode where they have a musical. That one's good.
Yeah, that's the best Planet of the Apes media out there.
Yeah, I agree. But it very much feels It very much feels like the kind of thing where you do it once and then like that's the gimmick. You know, it's like, oh, but actually it's Earth in the future. Wow, you know, it's like, yeah. We're done, right? Like.
To me, it's like monkeys are so fundamentally close to just like regular dudes that like any story you tell is like, I feel like this could have just been done with like dudes, right?
A little bit, yeah, kinda.
Like you have the big reveal, right? But then it's like, well, are you gonna bring a human in every time? Like, what's the sci-fi story here? It's not like Star Wars where it's like, in a world where you can jump between planets and there's like a bunch of fucking aliens. It's like, well, there's Monkey. Guys,
there's Monkey.
I don't mean to alarm you, but we got monkeys in this one.
If I was the Planet of the Apes 2, which if that's what it's called, what I would do is it takes place like after, like in the future, right, where it's monkeys.
Yeah, where it's monkeys.
And then there's one monkey who... There's Monkey. Dude, oh my god, AOL is a high enough tier. Or I think I don't think that's linked to a tier. Just if you say monkey, the Master Ugwe gets thrown at me. We used to have an emote, so people would use it way more, but now it's a very rare occurrence.
That's so funny.
Thank you. That like never happens anymore because nobody remembers that saying monkey does that. Anyway,
so fucking funny.
I felt like a god, says hell. You are. So you have the Planet of the Apes. They're all apes. Then there's one ape who through some sort of sciencey nonsense or whatever, gets lost on another planet, and the planet also has a sapient race, which is like bird people or something, you know? Whoa, bird people. And they've never seen a monkeys before. And blah 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 blah, and then you have the reveal at the end of the movie where the monkey's like on a mountain somewhere or whatever, and finds like a giant monkey Statue of Liberty, and it's like, no. And then like you have the third movie. This time it's a bird that do you get it? Do you understand my vision?
I do understand it.
Yeah.
I want this to happen with every every sequential Planet of the Apes sequel. They just get like a new. They do the exact same story, but it's with
exact same
like, species.
The only thing that changes is like the way that the society adapts to the specific animal. So like a bird society wouldn't like the things that they're eating are different because they have beaks. It's adapted to them being able to fly around and stuff, you know. And then you have a mole society, so the surface world is like relatively empty, but it's all underground, you know.
Metroid Prime Planet of the Apes.
Metroid, but it's Planet of the Apes. I think Samus would win.
Yeah, Samus would win.
Those
fucking monkeys would be gone, dude. Those apes are out.
Also, thank you very much, KQK, for the subscription. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for getting us to a level 3 hype. Yay!
Yippee!
Woo! I got gay wings. Nice. Hold on. Yippee! Hell yeah, dude.
Yippee.
Oh, it is actually called a pride wing. That's nice.
Yo!
That's fun. Cute. Samus blows up every planet she ever goes to, so not all of them. The majority, one of them's a space station, but the majority, not all of them though. Come on, give her a little bit of credit. She didn't destroy the ones from Prime, I think.
I mean, not all
she might
planets
have
a planet-destroying bomb inside them. So you
yeah.
know, I feel like she just takes the opportunity when she can. You know, I feel like maybe Samus, that was a little belligerent of you. You know, I feel like you could have maybe just like exploded a bit of it, not the whole thing.
Yeah, come on, girl.
Come on, girl. I feel like it's just wasteful. You know?
Yeah, honestly though, there's no need for that, for all that.
Yeah.
You know, we could repurpose these planets.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole. Well, actually, you know, all the wildlife shows up in other Metroid games anyway. Maybe they're just invasive species. So.
Good point. Good point. I'm sure the Chozo had good reason for putting those animals there, though.
Chozo were like, dude, check it out. This guy flies back and forth.
Dude, I love this new planet. Hey, it's me. I'm a Chozo. I love this new planet. I do kind of miss the animals that we have at home. Can we bring those over with no repercussions, like without considering the repercussions to the ecosystem? Because I'm bringing over my cat.
The shows are like, man, you know, I know we're on this planet here, but I gotta say, I have to be really honest. I really miss the guys that fly back and forth with the balls over and over.
You're so funny.
Here.
En everybody's like, ja, inderdaad. Ja, nee, die brengen we inderdaad gewoon terug. Die zijn zo leuk, die beesten. Ja, dat is mijn favoriete ding. Gewoon om naar die te kijken elke dag. Ja.
The shows that speak Dutch. This is known.
Ja, de shows zijn inderdaad Nederlands. Dat is... sorry.
Oh no,
anyway.
It's okay. It's okay. hey, you guys, you remember those guys that like just kind of they have a bunch of fucking spikes and they like stick to all the walls? I think we should bring those guys here.
An alarming lack of creatures sticking into the walls on this planet. Why?
Yeah.
Let's fix that. They did this one wrong. We'll fix it for them though.
Yeah. Oh man, you guys, fuck, you know what we're really missing? It's that fucking robot that waddles just like a little bit. I think his ecosystem's really missing that guy. Freaking-
Okay, hear me out. Listen, this cave is nice. Hear me out. Let's install some pipes for bugs to fly out of, as long as you stand near them.
Guys, I know I'm really enjoying this new planet, but I gotta say, I miss the bats that drill into your skull if you stand directly underneath them.
Not enough head trauma around these parts.
Yeah, like, come on, I have this noggin and it's not even being in danger. That's like part of the fun.
The Chozo were an interesting people.
I think they're awesome.
I think they're so
just like
awesome. Yeah.
me.
Also,
Give me
yes.
more-
Yeah.
Going to the territory, messing up the ecosystem.
Yeah, specifically also by bringing your own animals along. Because that's the thing. People are like, man, the Dutch ate all the fucking dodos. No, we brought dogs and cats along, which killed all the dodos. So it was still our fault. We just didn't eat them.
Wait, when did the dodos go extinct?
Last year.
No!
Yeah, sorry, just missed them.
Yeah. Oh my God! I didn't actually know the reason. I thought the dodos died out in like the Ice Age. That's
No.
on me. Thinking
Nope.
about the Blue Sky movie.
Ow. Yeah. I do
Oh my
like
God.
the second Ice Age movie is good.
The second Ice Age movie is
Hey,
much like
oh,
Dire
come
Movie
on.
Kid. One of the reasons that I am a film major.
Dude, that's so fucking good. That's real. I like that. That is good. I like that movie. Oh shit! I'm going to get pelted by little dudes! Ah! Whoa! Oh my gosh! Whoa! It's raining little dudes! Sorry.
This is what happened in Ice Age 2.
Oh yeah.
I don't think I've ever told this story.
Sorry.
Oh no!
Sorry. So, wait, how to get here? Chat says Mark Rutte killed the last dodo with his bare hands. Mark Rutte is, was our prime minister. Is he again? I don't know. He was a prime minister. And I can see him do it. It's so funny. He's like, he famously like did not care about getting in the fancy car with guards and stuff. He was just like cycling from his house to the parliament on his little bike. The idea that he would just like he's like tring, tring, on his little bike, and then like whoa, and then like jumps off his bike, throws the bike to the ground, runs towards a bird, and just strangles. Like the last one.
Just like no fight with those dogs, you know.
I don't need any dogs.
I bury him. Oh God, that's funny. That's fucking funny.
Anyway, what are you gonna say?
I was gonna say Ice Age 2 has an extremely dense commentary track for an animated movie available on DVD.
Oh.
They have two. One is like the director and the producer, but the other one is the head of every like visual and technical department on the movie. So like
Damn.
they have like 9 guys in there who are all talking about like, oh yeah, here's how we did the fur rendering. Here's how we animated this. Here's our direction with the art style here. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever heard. I'm 7 years old. I'm fundamentally changed.
Hell yeah, fuck yeah, dude. I love that.
So,
I think
is
that's
it the
great.
last dodo walks into traffic.
Walks into traffic, yeah.
Oh God.
He's still caretaker prime minister, and the government is still like, yeah, our government's fucked. Like, it's, I mean, lots of governments are fucked. The Dutch government is just fucked because it just cannot keep together. It just keeps falling apart every day. It's almost funny. It's pretty funny. It's funny.
You guys got a dude named Geert Wilders.
Geert Wilders. Oh yeah, no, we hate him. He's the worst. He is the most right-wing guy we got, basically.
I'm looking at these names. This is fucking. not to be mean, but these guys' names sound fake as fuck. There's ain't no goddamn way. There's like a dude named Secret Cog.
Wait, send me that name. Hold on, let me say it normally. Secret Cog. when the machine is mysterious. Oh, Secret Cog.
No, it's worse than I thought. argue that's worse.
Kaag is not a very normal last name, I will also say, but it does sound Dutch.
I feel like maybe I was being very generous with pronunciation in the first part.
No, you're fine.
But now I know the truth. Oh,
Yeah.
my fucking stomach hurts.
That's one of the funniest things. I think I used to be very much like, oh, the Dutch language is stupid because it sounds dumb, and I'm like, I love the Dutch language. It sounds so dumb.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It sounds dumb, but it also sounds delightful in a lot of ways, and we have a lot of like really fun words. Like we have a word for when something is when you're having fun, when something is like making you happy or making you laugh, but it's like only funny to you specifically.
Oh, that's awesome. What is that?
Binnenpretje, which would translate to like inside fun.
That's some like I'm a little like toad and I eat under like the cap of a mushroom ass like word. I love that.
Yeah, it's cute. I like it a lot.
That's adorable. I love that.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I'm a little mouse in a petticoat. I like to drink my tea under the dewdrop of a leaf.
And have my inside fun, my binnenpretjes.
And my inside fun.
Yeah. Oops. I wanna hold on. Let me find some more names. Where are you finding them?
I just looked up Dutch Prime Minister.
And then you found Sigrid. What the fuck is her name? Yeah, Sigrid Kaag also. Secret Cog. That wasn't funny. Yeah, to be me. Yeah. I'm having fun, but it's all for me. Yeah. That's what it is.
Oh my god.
I'm playing Dragon's Dogma 2. One of my pawns just said Among Us, and I'm kicking her out of my party. Don't correct me on this. I am taking that as that's all that she said. She just said Among Us based on nothing.
I really like Koos as a first name. That's really good.
Koos? Hold on. Also, Large Novelty, thank you very much for following. Koos? I assume Koos.
It's Koos.
Yeah, Koos.
I'm sorry, I'm about to butcher your delightfully whimsical language.
That's alright.
I like Henk Bierning. That's good.
Yeah,
and then
Henk,
Harm Bierting. Harm? His first name is Harm!
Harm? Is it spelled the same way?
Yes, exactly the same way.
Okay, wow. Harm.
Harm Biertema.
Oh, wait, okay. I have to tell you something. So, we mentioned baseball earlier. Do you want to know what the Dutch word for baseball is?
I'm so curious. What is it?
Honkball. It's cloud sports.
Clown sports! This is appropriate considering its American basis. It is a clown sport.
It's true, it's true. Like, that was like, I can't take full credit for bringing that to your attention. Because I reblogged a post the other day that's like, the Dutch language is nice, got all these nice words, blah, blah, blah. And then someone reblogged it for me in the tags said, or not even the tags, I don't know. Basically just asked like, hey OP, tell us what baseball is in Dutch. And then I was like, huh, is that? Oh, that's honkball.
Honkball. Oh, wait, hold on. This dude's giving the most air fryer ass like photo of all time.
Oh, wait. Is this the one you just sent me? Stephanus Abraham Steph Block here?
Yeah, look at his eyebrow, dude. He's
No,
raising
you're
that
right.
He's in a DreamWorks photo.
You're so right.
Everybody look up Steph Block.
I'll show him.
Oh my god, that's fucking hilarious. I love that. That's wonderful.
Look at this fucking dude.
Look at this fucking dude. Steph Block.
Jij hebt duidelijk geen airfryer.
Clearly.
No, wait, I'm gonna say it better. Jij hebt klaarblijkelijk geen airfryer. It does look kind of edited. It's fucked up.
He looks like not real. This is awesome.
It's so
I need to look at the list of Dutch politicians and look at you more. This is great. Great
So when you're
time.
feeling a bit down, you just do that.
There's a dude named Job Cohen. He looks like Mr.
Yo,
Bean.
he does? Wait, I've noted a name. Hold on, send me a photo. Yop Cohen, I know him.
Yeah, you'll go ahead and let me. I'm sorry.
Also,
He
Master,
looks like
thank
a
you
really-
so much for the subscription. Thank you.
Oh my god, he looks like a Dollar Tree Mr. Bean.
He does look like Mr. Bean. I never realized. Oh my god.
This is so fucking funny to me. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. They're politicians. They're not real people.
Yeah, exactly.
They just look like Mr. Bean. This is fucking me up, dude.
He looks like Mr. Bean. I'm gonna go to the Dollar Tree and then I'm gonna be like, "You got Bean," and they're like, "No, but we got Mr. Legume."
we got Yop Legume. I do also say the name job is like, I've always thought this ever since I learned of the English word job. Anytime I see someone whose name is Yop, I'm just like, your name's Job.
Your name's Job.
You're named fucking occupation, dude.
Yeah, so I need Sir Legume for my political position.
Imagine you're living in Amsterdam, one of the biggest cities in Europe, and you're like, I need Mr. Legume for my mayor. Oh my
wait,
god.
I need to ask how you pronounce this one. Hold on. I'm
Alright.
I want to make sure I'm looking at this right.
So how do you think?
I know it's not supposed to be Wim Dick, but like
No, that's it.
I know it's actually Wim Dick.
Yeah, that's how I pronounce that. It's Wim Dick.
Oh my god. That's a fake culture. It's not real. ain't no way somebody comes out of the womb and they're like, I'm naming him Wim Dick.
So, the Dutch word dick that you see there, D-I-K, it means fat.
No! Please, you can't be doing this to the Dutch. They've suffered enough at this point.
I am the Dutch.
And this is more like a question towards God.
I think we're doing this to ourselves, and we've done plenty to deserve it.
Yeah. Fucking Sisyphus at the mountain, but with like a Wim Dick. Why would you go to, oh man, I got this baby, we spent 9 months on it. You know what its name is? Wim Dick.
Wim Dick. Also...
Dick boy Wim!
Okay. Cappy also asks, isn't de Kok a Dutch last name also? Not like that. Not spelled as in like C-O-C-K, spelled as in K-O-K, which means chef. So it's fine, but yeah, there are Dutch people whose last name is the Cock.
I'm something of a chef myself, you know.
Compliments to the Cock. No!
Oh, I need water. Oh, I'm losing it.
Oh,
Jesus.
oh. Wait! So fat chef is...
Oh my god!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
That's insane!
Dutch is a fucking language. Oh.
Jesus, that's... I'm upset, like... Just for fun, I put it in Google Translate, and this is really getting me. I'm trying to lead my party, but I'm dummy dick, and the clapping my ass keeps learning the god.
Oh my god.
I take everything back. The Dutch is a beautiful gift to the world in this context.
Dutch is fucking fantastic.
Oh my god. Dick Chefcock.
Dick
Awesome.
Chefcock. Oh my god.
Oh, oh. All right. I forgot how we even got on this train, but I'm so glad.
I also don't remember. I don't think it matters. We're here
No,
now.
Not at all. Not at all.
I wanna. I love. Language isn't real. We made it up. Oh, we got it because of dodos. Why did we come here? Why did we come to dodos?
Oh yeah. Well, you made a joke about the dodos. Somebody in chat made a joke about the ex-prime minister ? Strangling a dodo.
Yeah, but why?
I looked up Dutch politician. I think dodo came from. What did dodo come from? I don't recall.
I don't remember.
Metroid
invasive species dodos Dutch. Thank you.
There we go.
There we go.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a banger intro to the Kitten Burst stream. I'm gonna be
Honestly, though, honestly.
My fucking abdomen's hurt.
Oh my god.
I don't gotta do ring fit today. I was just doing crunches for 35 minutes straight.
Dude, I also did ring fit, and I went on a walk.
Hell yeah.
Also, I want to share one other Dutch word that I like, which is our word for we have multiple words for hypocrite. We have hypocriet, which is the same thing, but then we also have schijnheilig, which means the same thing. But if you take schijnheilig literally, it's two words. It's schijn, which means fake, and heilig, which means holy. So it's literally just someone pretending to be holy.
That's really funny.
I think
that
that's so good. It's a really good one.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You've been having howling coughing fits in response to the Dutch language.
Oh no, I'm so sorry, man. She strikes. Oh, right, eggs. Oh god, we have so many fucking redeems to get to. Oh no.
I'm gonna go get properly into like an outfit for the day while you do this.
Oh,
I'll be right
back. Sure. Go ahead. All right, so, okay, wait. I'll do the uwu when she comes back. So I'll do the eggs first, and then we'll get to all the other stuff. Oh my god, what a fucking start to the stream. Whew. Okay. So remember, if you have but one little egg, you can use it to put. Sorry, if you have one little point, you can use it to put an egg on the stack on stream. It's fun good looking at my logo, I think, and all the redeems that I'm gonna get to. Beep, beep. There we go. Well, everyone, it's time for the eggs. And do you know who the first egg is from? Well, it's Vex Fidel. Hey, that rhymes. Nice. I'm a poet and I don't even know it. Esteemed Jester. Melzinov. Mike Loves Rabbit. Thy Dungeon Gal. Damn, y'all remember Sherwood Dungeon? I want to play that again. Eric number 0. Or no, I'm not sure. Polar Stars. Lucina of Stardust. Green Clonk. Rutsutera. Fire Golza 6858. Sekwar. Muzzle Flash. Kirakat. Ayo Hell. Woo. Capiorb finishing the first X stack and starting the second. We've got Mecha Fox Girl. Deaga 101. Dynalope. Banshee Strikes. Wait, how did I get here? KQ Gray. Master Gun. Akai Fuller. Oops. That's not really right. There we go. Tess Layden. And Leopoldius. Thank you for all the eggs. My first time being the X-Tech finisher, a big honor. It is a big honor, but do not forget that the most important thing in building the X-Tech is that you are working together. You are working together to achieve something greater than yourselves. That is the real part of the X-Tech. That's the real point of it. You know? Oh no! Yes, the X-Tech is communist.
This place
Yep,
is
cheese for
great.
Pumpkin before she comes back. Cheese outfit. Oh, you're so right. You're so right, sir. You're so right. Let me get the U-bots on top again. There we go. Put an Amy on her, please. I will. I noticed these. I noticed I had to take care of this first before she came back. Now she's looking at Amy. You mean to tell me dang, and here I was gonna name myself the executive. No, we're doing it together.
Hello, Zoe. Hi.
Oh, hello, Pumpkin. Hi, hello. How do you like your beautiful new outfit?
That's gorgeous. Hello, Amy Rose.
Yes, and a nice cheese.
Oh, hello, cheese.
Hello, cheese.
There you go.
Oh my god, you're having little nibbles of it. It's nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't have a lot of water right now, so in like 10 minutes I'm gonna get some more water when it's done filtering.
Okay. You should definitely do that. Yay! Woo, woo, woo. Oh, and another egg. Am I missing an egg? I am. Oh ja, oké. Kan we je meme dankjewel ook voor jouw ei? Zo, bovenop de stapel, mooi. En dan uitrekken. Jij ook, Pumpkin?
Ja!
Uitrekken, kom op.
I'm in danger.
Nee, gewoon even uitrekken. It's not that hard. Come on.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I hope you did that thing I told you to do. Otherwise, I'll be very disappointed.
Yeah, I definitely did it.
Yeah, what was it, huh?
Be cool.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh! Close one. I actually have a message that I sent myself 1 week ago of cool stuff to show you when we start playing Kitten Burst.
Oh, nice. Also, I got a donation, but it didn't show up on the stream for some reason. But okay, thank you very much for the donation. Thank you. One step closer to having a Roomba thingy, so that'll help with keeping my apartment tidy. The nice thing about a cheese bib is you can spill sauces all over it and then just eat the bib and it'll be tasty. Wow. Dude, patent that shit quickly. On the internet, no one knows you're a cat. I get called a cat often enough, though.
I feel like I'm interpreted as some sort of beast often enough that they don't know I'm things, but they know I'm something.
Did I know you're something?
I know I'm something.
Mm-hmm. As someone who also speaks more than one language, her ability to just swap between Dutch and English on a dime is genuinely impressive as fuck. Is it? I guess I'd never considered that it could be that it was any kind of special skill. But
What is horse?
what is horse?
Horse is a quadrupedal animal when we're looking. It actually has a secret fifth and sixth leg that only comes out when you're not looking. We've proven this through mirrors.
Stupid horses don't know how mirrors work.
It's a fucking idiot horse.
Stupid idiot horses. Also, Michael of Rabbit, you redeemed a hat for Derek, so if you could tell me what kind of hat you would like, then I will bestow the desired apparel upon our friend. I wouldn't be surprised if there's already edible bibs on the market. Oh, for sure, those have to exist. Your most cyber hat. Okay, let's see. The most cyber hat that I've got in my folder. I don't know if you would consider it cyber, but I feel like it's kind of appropriate because this is totally the kind of bonkers headwear that would only exist around like the 2000s. Which is a beanie with goggles built into it. Which I love. I think it's very fun.
Pretty sick. I mean, I would say it's close to cyber to me.
Right, exactly. Anyway, I've had no music on this entire time. How sad. I'm so sorry, everyone. So, you had some stuff to show me, you said?
Yes, when we end up being in the game.
Oh, in the game. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Then I'm now
also,
launching the game.
I'm wearing my TWRP shirt just for you, just for the stream.
What shirt?
My twerp shirt, my TWRP.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude! You got a twerp shirt. That's awesome.
I got a bright yellow. I actually have two because I think Starlight Brigade counts as one as well. I'm wearing my bright yellow one that they released a couple months ago.
Hell yeah, dude!
Fuck, it's really nice.
Nice. Oh, Kirakat also dropped a donation. Well, I didn't see. Oh, there it is. Thank you for your donation also, Kirakat. Okay, the game took a while to start last time. Jules! Hi, Jules! Hi! How are you? So good to see you. Hi. Also, you said hoi, which is Dutch for hi, which is very appropriate because we've been talking a lot about Dutch. So that's fun.
Hell yeah.
And thank you very much for giving Jules a shout out. Very well deserved. Okay, let me try to get it on screen. Oh, there it is. Nice, I didn't have to do shit. I'm good, I think you are awesome. That is so crazy, Jules, because I also think you are awesome.
Oh my god. Welcome to the best fucking video game of all time.
Let's fucking go!
Let's
Jules,
fucking go!
Jules, you would love this game because it's so good!
This title screen music is like one of my favorite tracks. It's so fucking cool sounding.
I love that it's like contextual too.
Oh yeah. That's actually all over the game. There's a lot of adaptive music.
Hell yeah, dude. The sound hoi always makes me think of Wind Waker. Oh yeah, hoi! I get it. I think the first time I played it, I was like, is this Dutch?
Me meeting Timmy from Undertale.
Oh yeah. Timmy's Dutch. It's confirmed.
Timmy's Dutch.
Waking up every morning and I think Zoe is awesome. Due to time zones, I go to bed every night and I think Jill's is awesome.
Hell yeah.
Best game of all time. I have to go on vacation. Of course, I have to go on vacation. That's the actual best game. We should I should show you Go Vacation sometimes. I think you would think it's cute.
Hell yeah.
If you have time after today's stream, I would love to do that.
Hell yeah. I'll see when the mechanic can get me in.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. Fair point.
If it's later, hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah, you're long.
We're fucking long. I forgot.
Happy's long.
That tube, that kitty tube, that tube. Woo! Did you know, says Kelly Gillen, there's a Dutch dub of a Myst game resulting in an excellent experience. I don't know if I know, because I haven't really... I used to watch my sister play Myst, but I don't know if she used to play it in Dutch or English when I was little. But I would be very interested in seeing that again. I just would love to play Myst again. It's just that I'm like a dum-dum, so I'm bad at it. They're remaking the second game from scratch, which will probably look very good.
Awesome. So fun fact in the Eternal September here, on one of the tables is a special book. Or a special series of books, I suppose. Let's see here. I don't know if it's like a
That's the King in
conditional
Yellow,
spawn.
isn't it?
Yeah, the King in Yellow. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Where is it? Where is it? It's around here somewhere. Oh, I think it's it's over here. Yes,
This-
there it is.
Hello, you are a book.
Oh yeah, a yellow book.
A
it's on the
yellow
other-
book. Oh. Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, it's
That
really
is
cute.
so cute.
I haven't
Wait.
seen anybody else talk about it, and I'm like, that's the WinRAR books. That's cute.
Oh, beetle. Are you a beetle rolling
Oh.
its... No? Oh, I think
it's
you're
a
something
super flower pot.
that's just something I knocked off a table, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a WinRAR logo. That's so cute.
Yeah, I love stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Little WinRAR.
Yeah, that's so cute. You know, they're still not getting any money, but...
Yeah, but thanks for not letting me have to pay. I use 7-zip.
Ow.
I'm not a WinRAR gal, but I respect it.
I'm pretty sure I have WinRAR.
You sniped that shit. Word.
Yeah, I'm good at that, I guess. I've decided.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. I will always love that they didn't want to call the sequel Myst 2, but new brand recognition was key. So they called it Riven, the sequel to Myst. I know, I love that it's called that. I think more
That's
things
awesome.
should be called like that. Should just their own thing and then the sequel to the original thing.
I mean, yeah.
That way,
think it's Win Cross.
Zathura, A Space Adventure wouldn't have failed.
True.
Do you know that?
I do. I watched it when it came out.
Yo, nice! The only other person I've ever met in the universe who knows what Zathura is.
I remember I like forgot about it for years, and then I remembered it because I randomly clicked on it on TV tropes, and I was like, this one.
Hell yeah. I learned about it much later because I was a very big Jumanji fan as a kid. I really loved the movie. I would watch it like every week. I watched the TV show even though it was bad. And then at some point, years later, I like learned about Wikipedia, you know, and I was just started looking stuff up, and I was like, oh, let's look at Jumanji, and then Jumanji said like, and there was a sequel called Zathura, and I was like, the what? That was a what? And then I watched it, and I was like, oh, it's really good.
Hell yeah. I love when there's bizarre sequels to things that you wouldn't expect. Like, the Rocky Horror Picture Show has, like, a sequel, and then,
Oh,
like,
shit.
2 written sequels. But, like, they're not good, but they do exist. And that's fascinating to me.
That's the more important part, I think, that they exist. Things don't have
Yeah.
to be good; they just have to exist. But if they're bad, then they shouldn't exist. Hobbit movies.
Jumanji stressed me out as an 8-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
What about The Hobbit?
Have you ever seen Hobbit movies, Punkit?
I've seen the first half of the first one. That's
Uh-huh.
it. I haven't actually seen the Lord of the Rings movie. I've only seen the first Lord of the Rings movie.
Oh yeah, I think we've talked about that. So
Rocky Horror is mid.
I've never seen it. I can't actually contribute to this conversation. I'm so sorry.
I don't think you would like it, but I enjoy it.
Yeah, I don't think it would be for me. I think that's why I didn't watch it.
Yeah, like knowing your preferences not for you, I don't think, but I think I have a great time with it.
Yeah,
I
like
only see it with,
I
Shadow
respect
Craft,
and
though.
appreciate its existence. It's just not for me, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My university does a shadow cast of it, which means they play the movie in the background and then have actors mime along to it.
Wait, that sounds super fun.
It's fucking awesome because you're supposed to like yell and do things in the audience while it's happening. They give you like a little goodie bag of like lights and newspapers and playing cards, and it's the thing they do yearly. It's so cool.
Oh, that sounds so fun.
Yeah, so maybe the Rocky Horror movie is mid, but I've never watched it without the shadow cast, and the shadow cast is fun as hell. So I can never think of this much.
Naturally, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I could literally go on for hours about why I hate the Hobbit movies. Although I used to be able to go on for longer because the memory of the actual events of the movies were fresher in my mind and stuff. But the simple thing to say is that the Lord of the Rings books are a sequel to the Hobbit book. The Hobbit book is a children's book. Right?
Yes.
It's for kids. So it is very simple. It's very slow. There aren't that many stakes or anything. At one point, there is like near the end of the movie, the book, sorry. There's like a big war, and at the start of it, Bilbo trips, hits his head, and then sleeps through the entire war.
Oh yeah. I do know that.
Yes.
It's fucking hilarious.
It's super funny because it's a kid's book and it's meant to be funny and stuff. Then you have Lord of the Rings. So the Lord of the Rings books, they are about a lot of things. They are about war. They are about, you know, this great suffering and stuff, and this journey that changes Frodo and the others in irreparable ways and stuff. But it is also about like beauty in the world and companionship and stuff. And while it does have war scenes, it has a lot more quiet, slow moments and stuff than the movies would have you believe. And a lot of people will, like, the Lord of the Rings movies are universally praised, but not completely universally. There are people that are like, well, they changed things from the books. They're more focused on the violent aspects and stuff, and they cut out a lot of these very slow, somber, or sweet scenes and stuff, or cut them down and stuff. And it's true, but personally I still feel like Lord of the Rings movies do a very good job of converting these books to film, because you know, they have 3 books that are too long for one movie each, so they made them a little bit shorter and still like kept the core message and stuff and things like that.
And then there's The Hobbit.
And then there's The Hobbit. So when they were, the reason why I hate The Hobbit is that they did not look at The Hobbit, one book, and said, all right, we can turn it into one movie where we might have to cut some things short, but we can keep the same lighthearted kids book tone. No, they said, all right, so how do we make more Lord of the Rings? They did not say, how do we make The Hobbit?
Lame.
I hate it. Also, one of the very first things that happened is that they completely cut out Bilbo's entire character arc.
Awesome.
Because you know the famous scene where he's like, "I'm going on an adventure." You know that?
Yeah, sure.
That's not a fucking thing. In the book, he gets kidnapped by the dwarves and forced to come along, and he has to like learn to love it as he goes along. He doesn't get asked if he wants to come, and then they go. And then he goes, no. And they go, all right then. Well, bye. And then he goes, wait, maybe I do want to come. And I love adventure now. No, that's not what happens. He literally gets dragged along against his will and has to learn that he does like going outside, actually. His entire character arc just ruined. First, like, 10 minutes of the film. It's garbage.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Wow. I love that you've just been kind of spinning in place. I do this as well when I start up the game.
Right? I'm stimming.
It's the stim video game.
Yeah, dude. It's just I don't want to go and actually have dialogue and stuff while we're still having a conversation, you know?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Sense.
In the books, he gets Stockholm syndrome. Stockholm syndrome's not real, but
yeah.
Arguably. I mean. Yeah, I guess you could describe it in that sense. Like, yeah, he gets dragged along on an adventure by people that he doesn't like, and then he gets to know the people, and he gets to know the world outside the Shire, and he gets to know the thrill of adventure, and he goes, oh, this is nice, actually. I feel like saying that it's Stockholm Syndrome is a little mean. It's a little... it takes away from the actual narrative, but as a joke, you can say that.
Yes.
I love stretching a book to 3 movies and still cutting important aspects of it. That's the fucked up thing. It's like they stretch it to three movies, but not by being super faithful to the source material, but by putting in a bunch of bullshit to make it more like Lord of the Rings. It's so dumb.
Yeah.
What if we put in a funny weed wizard who eats squirrel poop or whatever he does? Ha 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 ha. Because then, you know, it's not like, oh, more wizards, more like Lord of the Rings instead of only Gandalf. No.
That's a thing that happens?
Yeah, that's a thing that happens. Radagast, the gray or brown, I think. I don't know. It's a lot of the stuff that they take from, or that they put into the Hobbit movies are things from like the Silmarillion and stuff. So it's things that exists. Radagast is a character, but You know, the only thing that I was less mad about, I guess, as a prequel to the Hobbit, to the Lord of the Rings movies, which is weird because we now have a prequel to some movies that are based on the thing that those movies are based on the sequel of. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I understand what you're getting at.
Yeah, right? So at one moment in the book, Gandalf is like, okay, I have to go and do some other stuff. You guys are on your own. And then, like, Bilbo has to save the day because they get captured by elves or whatever. Or was it spiders? It's spiders. I think it's both.
The same thing.
Same thing. The book doesn't explain what he's doing. The book just kind of says like, oh yeah, I had to go deal with like a necromancer or something.
Daniel's got some shit to do, whatever.
He's got some shit to do.
Yeah.
Dude, like he's like a superhero. I don't know if you know this, but wizards in Lord of the Rings you can't just become a wizard. The wizards are timeless entities that have existed since the creation of the world, and there are only 9 of them.
That's awesome, actually.
Yeah, it's very good. So he's like a superhero. So he's like, I have to go kill the necromancer, and it was only later said by Tolkien when he was more or less kept at gunpoint, like to make more stuff in this world. People like this world, and he was like, okay, I guess I'll write Lord of the Rings, I guess. That's not all there is to it, but it was kind of that. He was like told to make more because The Hobbit was so successful. And he was like, oh, I can put my war trauma in this. So he only later came up with the idea that Gandalf, when he went to take care of the necromancer, he found out that the necromancer was Sauron trying to come back to life. So they put that in the movie. They put like a scene in the movie where he goes to the necromancer's fortress and he finds out that the necromancer is actually Sauron. He's like, oh fuck, this is serious. I should probably do something about this in a couple hundred years. Not a couple hundred, it's like 100.
He just like me for real. I understand him.
Yeah, right.
Oh, hi Tari. Good to see you.
Hello. Wizards are like sirens? Sirens? Sure. Oh yeah, because 9. Yeah. They're demigods. Yeah, the wizards are demigods.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, excuse me. They're just they're just they're like, you're put on this earth to chill, but now you got to do Superman shit.
I think they were put on the earth to like maintain it, I believe, if I remember correctly.
I think with the way Gandalf's piping up, I think he was made to be put on this earth to chill.
I think that everything we know about Gandalf and his general demeanor and stuff is he was put on this earth to maintain it, and he recognizes that, but still takes every fucking moment to chill.
They all should have just hung out. So true.
So real, Jules. You're so right.
Gandalf discovered the joys of chilling.
That's what I'm saying. No, but that is actually it, though. Like, Gandalf met the hobbits and was like, wait, this rules.
No, wait. Just a bunch of little guys sit around and like eat food all day and hang out, like,
eat food and get
some.
high. I want to do this. That's the thing. That's why Gandalf keeps coming back to the Shire, is because he met hobbits and was like, this rules.
Gandalf was like, dude, these guys are tight. Oh my god, I'm missing out.
Yeah.
I'm here for a long time and a good time. I'm absolutely gonna get wizard high.
I'm going to smoke the Hobbit wizard weed.
My dear friend Bilbo, you guys' weed is so good, but I think if we apply a little bit of my wizard magic, we can make it even better.
Smoking the shit that brings me to the Eye of Sora. I think smoking the shit that X is like the funniest format for me.
I love that one so much. Smoking that shit that made Walter White. I'm so proud of that one.
That's really good. That's really good.
Smoking that shit that made Jesse a pink man.
I have a stream that my friend's been planning for like 6 months now called Small Goodman, where we do a role play of Small Goodman in the big city by using a really small Saul Goodman model in Gmod. We were planning it, and then like out of nowhere in like December, the radio TV crew did like their Breaking Bad role play Gmod.
Oh wait, no, I've seen some clips of you doing that actually.
Yeah,
where you're
we're
like
still gonna
testing
do it,
stuff
but
out.
I was like, no.
Yeah, no, we can't do it as much anymore. Now people are gonna think we're just copying them. I don't imagine the RSTV crew would like give you any shit for it, but yeah, maybe other people.
I doubt it. I just thought it was funny. I was like, oh shit, I thought we had that one in the bag.
Yeah.
Oh well.
I've been there.
Extremely funny.
Yeah.
I love the noise that the Kitten Burst blast makes.
Me too. Smoking that shit that made Gandalf the Grey. Should we play the game?
Yeah, maybe we should play the game. So I have a fun fact about. Oh yeah, there's question marks here. I forget what those are about. Oh, does Sigurd have new dialogue?
Maybe. Looks like it. But you had a fun fact first?
Oh yeah, well you'll get to it when we go to LRPA.
Okay.
The Null Space Castle.
Okay.
Should we play the game? Yeah.
1 hour in. Yeah.
For fun.
Oops. Gandalf the Grey about to become Gandalf the Green, if you know what I mean.
No.
I love that rhyme.
We
That
had
makes so
fun
good.
talking about Dutch. So.
Yeah, we had a good time. And then it'll be e-break. Yeah.
Awesome.
Wait.
I'm him. I will continue to be him. I will always be him. This shit ain't nothing to me, man.
Pop said they wanted some initiative. I took out their whole quadrant.
Man, if only Sauron had done some drugs, he wouldn't have joined Saruman. If only Saruman had done some drugs, he wouldn't have. Whatever.
Nodding along.
Yeah.
Thank you for breaking me out.
Huh? Yeah, it was easy.
You were like,
Oh my gosh! Shit! Dude, this is like fucking Pivot.
Yeah, I love this.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was looking away. I fucking love this drawing. It's so good.
It's so
I love you're happy.
cute. Yeah, I'm all happy with the tail. Wow. This is totally like Pivot, dude. The way that the kitty is
Yeah.
made and stuff. I loved Pivot. I used to have people fight by summoning giant hands and punching each other with them.
Awesome.
Go figure.
You know Happy would love Flipnote, by the way. You know Happy would love Flipnote.
Oh, for real, dude. Happy would also just love the fucking Nintendo DS chat room thing. Picture chat.
Just drawing :3 over and over in PictoChat, sending messages out to the ether.
It'd be so cute.
It'd be so cute. I'd be so delighted if I met Happy in PictoChat.
Yeah. Yeah, just like that.
Saber,
Saber,
they
come
made a
on.
whole drawing for you.
Yeah, they did that for you. It's an animated drawing, even.
Yeah, that takes so much work, especially for a little guy.
Yeah.
It's trapped behind the computer.
Help! Saber, help! Just imagine, like Happy comes up to Saber and is like, you saved me like this. It's like, and then like half a second later, Saber, help! I'm stuck.
Is that a bunch of soda cans underneath the screen there? That's really funny.
I'll check in a moment. What is this?
This is your mission if you want to. So you can go back to things you've already done. You did like a Mordecai, like
I've never actually watched regular show.
It's a good time.
The most important thing I know about regular show is can we pretend that the airplanes are blah blah in the night sky?
Use your wish right now.
Wish right
just
now.
eating junk food under here. That's really funny.
But she eating junk food. It's virtual space.
It's virtual space. And she's eating like ramen, I think.
Yeah.
That's funny. I love that.
Ramen. You have a good bunch of cups. Do the dishes, girl. I mean, I get
Saber,
it, but come on.
Saber, you will always be famous to me.
This is real. It's true. Smoking
Mordecai.
his shit and made Mordecai my feet. That's really good.
You know who else is eating junk food in virtual space?
My mom. That's also a thing I know.
You know who else is the honored one? Hello, Polly.
Hi, Polly. Ahoy, stowaway. Polly, be nice. Ahoy, communications officer, Hoppy. What? Whoa, robot. Drill. I am Pendle. What's the voice I had for Polyona? Yar, I be a pirate, but with a high-pitched voice. Yar,
Yeah.
that be who I am. True, I am a Pandolux variable surface robot and the quartermaster of this here fine cyber ship, the Eternal September. Do you require anything else? Whoa, robot! True. Why do you talk like that? The captain changed me language setting to pirate. No. Language setting, not speech pattern. Language.
Yeah, it's like Minecraft. You just change it to pirate.
What? Oh, sorry, what?
Yeah, in Minecraft you can just change the language to pirate. That's a real thing.
Oh my god. I didn't know. Yeah. It's just like Minecraft. Jargon. We're going here? Or...
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Long.
Long. Yeah, you can go back to
Long.
Animal Station, but there's more stuff here in LRPA.
Okay. Oh, this is not. Wait, so is this. This is progress, right? This is where we wanted to go?
Yeah, it's progress,
alright,
yeah.
Okay.
I'm back here. What should I be looking for?
4 new circuits have appeared in this site.
Okay, I'll go check them out.
Glove. Glove. Go like a fun.
Whee! Ah!
Yippee!
Yay!
So at the very
Tube.
tube.
The tube!
The tube!
Underneath this structure here is like a cool thing you can check out.
Okay.
Donk.
I thought maybe it is water. Let's find out. Is it that? Is it that?
It is. It's next to it.
Is it that?
Yeah.
Hello? Oh, okay.
Egg.
How do I? Oh,
Hi!
sig. Ooh. Oh. Ooh. Oh.
You can make your own binaural beats here. This game is toys.
This game
So
is
true.
toys. Yeah.
I'm stimming.
I'm fucking stimming, dude.
So
Also,
fun
hello,
fact,
Crimson Slasher.
I know it's been a week for you, so I'll just catch you up on like what this might be talking about. But there is another report that talks about having the most effectiveness in recreating something when binaural beats of a certain frequency are present.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
And so this is here to kind of like test that out. It doesn't actually do anything as far as I know because I set it to the exact frequencies, but that was one of the logs that you read last week.
Right, I remember now, thank you.
Yeah. I was like, I have to tell Zoe this when
Yeah.
when we do it.
I have to make sure she properly appreciates the game.
Well, I didn't find this until I beat the game, so I was like, oh, oops. This game
That's
is
okay. It's just a toys.
toy. My toys.
My
I think
toys.
toys with a U is like the funniest way of saying it.
Toys.
We should share our
Toys.
toys.
Which was
We smoked the bluey weed.
we smoked the fucking bluey weed, dude.
It's rectangular. We should share our toys.
We should share our toys. I fucking love Bluey so much, it's so cute.
great. It's great.
It's also just really funny.
It is really
Okay.
funny.
Mm-hmm. Oh right, I did this now.
Give you new powers.
Well,
The
Ooh.
neck.
the neck. Oh.
Yeah, it is not used at all to you being long cat.
I love that this is in here because it's so clearly not. It's not particularly functional. You know, the long cat. It's just
Yeah.
funny, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
How do I go fast again? Oh no.
You have to switch states.
Oh yeah. Whee! What's that?
Wouldn't you like to know?
I would. That's why we're going there.
Yippee! I would like to know too.
Oh great. Ah, just lore. I can't wait to go out of this and then bump into it. A good kids show should be enjoyable to all who may have to watch it. I think some people set it for like bearable. Yeah. A lot of kids shows are just sort of made with the intent to keep the child occupied, and they're like, and also we'll have this episode be about I don't know, eating your vegetables, whatever, you know? But Bluey does so much more. I even watched an episode that dealt with dealing with death, which was very interesting, and was kind of it wasn't like a metaphor either. Like it was just actually like they find a dead bird, and then
Damn,
and
yeah,
then
that common
Bluey learns how to deal with that. My ass watches Sesame Street for fun. Of course, Jills, because it's puppetry, and
yeah.
puppetry is fucking awesome.
Yeah, 'cause it's fucking epic. It's there was like a show for preschoolers I really wanted to watch called Mophie because it looks delightful.
Mophie? I don't know that.
Yeah, it's stop motion animation and it's all like cotton creatures. It's gorgeous.
Oh, that sounds so nice.
Yeah, I'll find a picture for you.
Yeah, please do.
While you're playing.
Okay, so subliminal stimuli, an adjunct to etheric projection. Lewis T. Lithodelphis Research Project Agency. Zerotas Lithodel. Key Energy _VT. Hello, thank you very much for following. Welcome.
Egg.
Summary. Several studies were conducted to encode patterns in the subconscious of subjects. The subconsciousness? Whatever. Visual stimuli were spliced into beta tapes to be used in televisions displayed in waiting rooms. Subjects were held in the waiting rooms for 30 to 45 minutes before dreammentation studies. Audio stimuli were emitted by speakers embedded into stuffed toys. Objects with an existing emotional attachment to subjects were less likely to be rejected. That sounds a little fucked up. Subjects exposed to stimuli showed an increased performance in etheric projection. You sure are
It is very weird to
manipulated.
see the scientific talk in a long cat happy time game.
It is strange, but I also kind of like it.
I vibe with it extremely.
Ruins. I'm not a
Yeah,
Blue
baby.
fan, but I can appreciate that they're actually making a show for preschoolers. It got like some narrative juice in it. Yeah, I don't know if I mean, yeah. Like narrative juice to me suggests that it's like, oh yeah, there's an ongoing plot, and that's not the case. Like it doesn't really feel, the premise itself doesn't necessarily feel different than other preschool shows or like little kid shows that I know of per se. It's just, the characters are playing and they learn a little lesson, and it's about kids, and sometimes they're at preschool and sometimes they're at the beach. It's just it's made with a lot more love, care, and respect for its audience than most shows. With narrative juice, I just meant like they just care about certain. Yes, yeah, okay, all right. Just know about the Blue extended universe. Listen, I'm only on episode 39. Come on.
That's like Steven Universe. The lore only comes in like episode 52.
Wait, actually, something that is very funny to me is that there is actually more to this, to, I guess, the universe than I initially thought. Not anything super exciting or anything, just kind of like fun. Because I originally assumed it was just the real world with their dogs because that's cute. But it's actually like a dog world. Like they
like call each other dogs, right?
They call each other dogs, first of all. And they do things like shake themselves dry when they get out of water, and that is specifically something that Bluey doesn't know how to do yet. She hasn't learned that yet.
Oh my god!
Yeah, right. And at one episode, I was very surprised.
Oh, you can do it! You can do it!
Oh, I don't know about that. Did I? Okay, cool.
I heard the noise.
Cool. One episode, I was very surprised to find out that one of Bluey's cousins just acts like an actual dog. Is on all fours, is barking and yipping, does not talk.
That's awesome.
And so at first I assumed that this dog is neurodivergent, you know. This is neurodivergency rep, how fun. But then I find out, which is also very fun, no, this dog is a baby. This dog is a puppy.
Oh.
They only achieve they only achieve sapience when they grow just a little bit older. That is so funny to me.
That's really funny.
And throughout the show you do see her like grow up a little bit. It's very cute.
What? That's adorable. This is true to the cousin experience. Sometimes they just act like dogs.
That's true. It's a doggy dog world. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a doggy dog world. I guess the kids being named Bluey and Bingo maybe gives away that they're dogs rather than people. That too, because their dad is called Bandit and their mom, I think, is called
Chili, right?
Yeah, Chili, I think. So like and like other dogs just also have like dog-like names more often than they have people names. It's really cute. And this is a kitty cat world. For Happy, it's always a kitty cat world.
This is so true.
Another circuit connected.
Nice. Hey, robot, can you pull files from this place? I'm trying, but most of them are encrypted with an LRPA cipher. I'll need communications after Happy to complete the rest of the circuits.
What's
The Lithodelphis Research Projects Agency. 'Tis the government agency that first discovered cyberspace.
How did they discover cyberspace?
It was theorized that there was another plane of reality alongside our physical one where humans' collective consciousness and data manifested. The Aether Plane. Whoa! This is lore.
Yeah, this is the lore.
During the Cold War, a ton of money was poured into this research. The LRPA found out that computers could be used to travel to this space. If they could travel to the Aether Plane, they could fly over to other countries' sites to eavesdrop. However, with the old tech they had on hand, they needed a mind with a very active imagination in order to pull that off. Kids. Bluey.
They got Bluey for this.
Like they made Bluey into propaganda, so they get kids in here. In some studies, they used psychoactive substances. In others, they used kids. If they were feeling extra unethical that day, they did both.
Oh man, yeah.
I should note that this is not confirmed to be true and is considered a conspiracy theory. Hey, robot, why aren't you doing the voice? Oh, wait. Oh, fuck. Sorry. Polly's just like, by the way, this shit's like not real. Hey, do the voice. Oh, our fucking whatever.
I love Saber.
Yeah, me too.
Do the voice robot. Okay.
Yeah, I will. Captain, I hate you so much. 'Tis a matter of debate. Why aren't you doing the voice?
It's awesome.
It's really good. I kind of wish that solid liquid thing would be on screen at all times so I could like tell.
Yeah, you get an intuitive feel for it though. I found out.
I
You can also, I think actually you might be able to. No, wait, hold on.
That's not even what I wanted to press, but that is just.
Yar, this be mere tall titles at the moment there, Captain.
At the moment. The yawner. I'm yawning. I'm a bit tired because I did a lot today. You wanna be? You wanna loiter?
Yeah, I've been reassigned so many times. I don't even know what my job is anymore.
Okay.
I've just been holding this clipboard and people seem to leave me alone. Awesome.
Dream
You
job.
go loitering. Yeah. Go loitering statue.
Hell yeah.
My toys.
My toys.
I'm
We
just
should
thinking
stream.
about. I'm just thinking about fucking the blue toys thing.
It's so funny.
My toys.
My toys. Oh, by the way, I was talking with Punkin about this before stream as well. So there's like a Punkin. Well, there's also Punkin video games. I guess you do make those.
This is you played one. It's true.
It's true. But
It's a blue video game.
yeah, not as satisfying as I'd hope. There's a blue video game. Apparently, it didn't review very well. I just think it'd be really funny to play that on stream also. And if it's not good, I get really emotional about that.
It would be really good.
I think it would be funny.
It would be funny.
Funny. Do you make your
This is
own
known.
Bluey in it, just like how you make your own Peppa in the Peppa Pig game?
I think it's like a multiplayer co-op thing actually, where you play as the
Oh.
different family members.
Oh, Punkage, you know what that means?
I gotta play the Bluey game.
Oh, you gotta play the Bluey game with me.
Yeah, I have to. I would be honored.
Hell yeah, dude. That's such a funny thing to me. It's like when I asked you to play this with me, you're like, I'd be honored. It's like, what are you talking about? We're just hanging out.
I think you're cool. I think you're cool, and you make good streams. And I
Aw.
think you're awesome.
Thanks. I think you're awesome. I think you're super funny and you have really good opinions. And your
Aw.
art is awesome and wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. My toys.
My toy.
My toys.
Skitari, if you want to, like, I would love that. It'd be fantastic. Don't feel pressured to, but if you want to go for it, absolutely.
Ooh. Oh wait, did you help? Is this about the Astrogard trailer?
No, Skitari
Oh.
made like trailer for the Susan Taxpayer demo when it came out. It was really cool.
Ooh. Well, I'm sure I've
Yeah.
watched and enjoyed that one too.
Hell yeah.
People being nice to each other. Yay! Yay!
Yay! Yay!
It was made by the same people who made the Peppa Pig game. No!
Yeah.
No! Oh
Yeah. You know that didn't
no!
review well.
Oh. You know that didn't review well.
Rouge.
Rouge. your shadow's so gruff, like a fucking truck driver.
I think it's funny knowing he's like 15.
I love trucking and fucking. He's 50.
He's 50. Yeah, he is. I have always thought it'd be funny if Shadow the Hedgehog spoke like, "I'll be there in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail," like some fucking like 50s dude.
Yeah. Really though. Wait, okay, does Bluey mourn the queen too? Probably not, because in one of the episodes, she contemplates stealing all the queen's butlers, and then her dad is like, haha, yeah. So...
Awesome. Thank you, Bandit.
Thank you so much!
Oh my god.
And then he's like, but how do we escape the cops? And then she's like, we get a bunch of people to pretend to be us in different cars so they can't tell which we are, and then we slip away. And he's like, that would work. Good job.
This is so accurate to actually how kids talk. That's fucking awesome.
But it's also so good is they get actual kids to voice all the kids. And all those
that's
kids clearly have a
delightful.
lot of fun with it. It's really cute.
That's so fucking cute.
Hold on, wait. I'm gonna put it on stream and I'll send it to you as well.
Good pop-up
Yes,
croc.
yes.
No, upstairs for bedtime.
It's such a good. Okay. Oh my god, the thing you sent me. It looks so cute. It's really adorable. This kid does such a good scream. It's so awesome.
Oh, let me listen to this.
Oh wait, it's a bad thing. Hold on. Which one of these is an MP4? Is it this one? Is it this one?
That's such a real scream.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
It's so good. The fuck? What? Okay. Anyway. Oh no! Wait. I this was before I figured out how to convert within OBS. Never mind. Anyway, you got it.
Yeah, that's all good.
It's all good. Oh, I got some eggs. we've been having so much fun. I forgot to do eggs. I'm so sorry, everyone. Crimson Flasher. See, that's a lesson I have to learn. Only there was a Louis episode about that. Squid Liminal and Jules. Thank you all so much for the eggs. And I will be taking a sippy also. I would love one actually. I have shucked my entire supply of water.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow.
Cyborg, earlier you said I didn't think I'd ever see this place again. Have you been here before?
Yeah. I was one of the kids in those LRPA experiments. Oh.
Yeah, I bet you feel pretty fucking stupid right now, Polly, huh? I bet you feel pretty fucking stupid.
Shithead.
Shit. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, Polly.
I think we should drop Polly off of the Eternal September into the void.
Yeah. Oh shit.
Yar, I be lost for all eternity.
Yar, I'm making an apology.
Yar, I be making an apology video. Yar, I be sorry that Saber felt offended by what I said. They made us try to imagine stuff and find it in cyberspace. I lived in that LRPA office building for months, so I imagined this castle in cyberspace based on it. Oh, you made this place. Okay, this is priority, okay. A mighty coincidence that Happy would stumble upon this site. The odds are mighty unlikely. Cyberspace has a habit of creating coincidences. I try not to read too much into them.
You lived in an office? That must have been awful. Awful. I was not gonna say awesome. I misspoke.
It was pretty fun for a while, TBH.
I've always wondered what an office is like.
I just imagine Happy you lived in an office, and then a little paw to the mouth, and then the camera pans up to a little thought bubble, and it's her documents. That must have been awesome.
Happy's imagining oh, I'm scanning papers, yippee! I'm knocking over stacks of paper.
Yeah, I'm talking about my balls behind their back on the water cooler. Yay!
Happy thinking in Susan Taxpayer gameplay.
Just if they meet,
Yeah. I would love to try a Susan Taxpayer Happy crossover art.
dude,
awesome.
I would love that, dude. It was so
I might do that.
good.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Slamming my paws on the typewriter.
my paws are too awkward to type good.
Oh, I can only type 3. Oh.
Oh no! She's they have a keyboard that is just one big button, which is 3.
I'm delighted by this world we've painted.
Me too. It's so good.
It's Susan Taxpayer. I love being in an office.
Yay!
He accidentally covers themselves in orange paint before meeting Susan. Awesome.
Oh my god.
Oh, awesome. This is what it's all about.
This is what it's all about. Thanks so much for following.
Phew, a long day's work. Let's see what I did. 3-3. 3-3.
I love Happy so much. I'm so glad Happy is exactly like the way that we're portraying them.
Yes. Happy's awesome. I love you, Happy.
I love Happy so much.
Character.
Really though. It was pretty fun for a while, TBH. I mostly just hung out in my room watching movies.
Awesome.
That's nice.
A saber. I'm gonna send you something.
Oh?
Yeah. Here you go.
Oh, it's good. Oh my god, give me a second. It's Bluey Saber. Bluey Happy. Blappy.
It's Blappy.
It's Blappy.
Awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for this.
No problem. No problem.
So good. That one's staying on stream for a while. That one's going on the fridge.
Yippee! It's Blappy.
Hold on. Let me put text also so people know.
It's Blappy.
It's Blappy.
So joyous. So joyous.
So joyous. Well, bigger.
Oh yeah, fun fact, the Null Space Castle has adapted music the first time you show up in it.
Ooh, nice.
There's little piano notes that correspond to which direction Happy's facing. It's really cute.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, the Blappy.
The Blappy.
It's my favorite sonar noise.
It's really good. So joyous.
Did I show you that that meme of like the guy who holds up the cat to like the Ring doorbell? And I was like super and happy.
I don't think you did, but that is really good. The other
Like when you
day,
do sonar, you can see all the little lines. It's fun.
The other day, a friend of mine was streaming, and I don't remember what the context was, but Chet wanted them to go nya, and and she and her co-host were like no, and then I just joined only the voice chat to just go meow, 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 meow.
Delightful. Delightful.
And then she was like, "Hey Zoe, how are you doing?" And then I left.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Throughput.
Let's go. What's that green shade?
Oh, that's a text block.
Okay. It's just one that I already have or something.
I think you can't read them in races.
You would think that green would be the color when you can read them.
Curious.
Yes, indeed. What is the Blappy lore? How does Blappy fit into the Bluey extended universe?
I mean, so we've now learned that cyberspace is actually an unintentional creation. It is like another realm, based on the human subconscious or unconscious.
Children's dreams and all that stuff.
Perhaps by me drawing it, Blappy just exists.
Oh, beautiful! Very fascinating lore.
Blappy is real, and you can talk to Blappy now.
That's awesome. I would like Blappy to know that I love them.
Blappy knows. Blappy was made with this knowledge inherent to her.
That is wonderful. That is so nice. Imagine that you come into existence and one of the things you know is that you are loved.
That's awesome.
like you just know that for sure. That's actually so nice.
That's so delightful. I'm pocketing this thought. Yeah, I really
cool
like
houses.
So I've been talking to you about the virtual worlds tabletop thing for a while. I made the way that works without knowing that it's also what Kitten Burst does. So when I like found out it was doing it, I was like, no way, same brain.
Same brain. Nice. So yeah, I was playing this and I was like, how much of this did you know already when you made Virtual Worlds?
I actually didn't know like anything. I knew like the first world maybe, and that was it. I didn't even know Animal Station was just the first null space visit.
Oh wow,
so, like,
nice.
the fact that so much lines up, I was like, let's go. Champigo is a fucking genius.
So real. Is this like... Wait, Cat comes in room. Hi, Cat, how you doing? Cat leaves room. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Is this kind of like a Jake the dog like? Not usually. But yeah.
I mean, like as in you're stretching like all the way across. So long. That makes sense. No, you're not normally this long. This is a special.
That tube.
This is a special tube cosmetic.
That tube. Careful not to turn Bleppy into creepypasta. We could never. Bleppy is too delightful.
Yeah, Bleppy loves.
Bleppy loves. Inherent. Inherent knowledge of love.
Bleppy loves, parentheses, inherent.
Captain, I've cracked the cipher, but it appears all the files have been moved. Huh? Who could have moved them? This place doesn't look like it's been touched since I left decades ago.
Why did you leave?
In protest, I was fed up with the endless tests. Plus, they stole all of my beta tapes.
Beta tapes?
Yeah, that's how I watched all those movies. I had a TV with a built-in beta tape player in my room. I figured out that I could actually record the TV to tape. I found a bunch of blank tapes in a storage closet and snuck them into my room. Every time I found a TV station playing a movie, I recorded it to a tape. I built up a pretty huge library, and then I put it on Pirate Bay.
Awesome.
That's actually, and also on archive.org, which is very important, and we need to make sure we preserve that.
Yippee.
Yippee! That's actually how I got into hacking. The Pando TV in my room has had some built-in anti-copying protections, so when you tried to record from the TV, the colors would get all messed up, and the picture would move around. That's so much more fun than the thing that streaming services nowadays do, where you just see nothing.
Yeah.
I had a ton of... See, that's the thing. Like, anti-piracy stuff used to be fun. You know, like, the game would just be like, oh, well, we're throwing an unbeatable boss at you now for fun.
Yeah,
you know?
Also, your game save file gets deleted in the last boss.
Yeah. Like, that kind of shit is very mean, but it's very funny.
It's very funny.
Mm-hmm. I had a ton of free time, so I figured out how to mess with the settings to get around it. When they found out what I was doing, they took all my tapes. The fucking sad face is so good.
I love Saber.
Poor little meow meow. My whole collection just gone. My apes.
My apes.
So I refuse to go back into cyberspace.
That's horrible!
To be fair, I'm not 100% sure those tapes I used were all blank. I may have copied over something important.
I love you, Saber. You'll always be famous.
So real.
I think... Oh, is it? Oh, yeah, no, you haven't read that before.
Whee!
It's got the... Whee! It's got the little question.
Sometimes Happy takes over, you know? And then I have to go, wee! All my tapes, my tapes gone.
All my tapes. My tapes.
My tapes. I think we should share our tapes.
We should share our tapes. It's rectangular. Goes to cyberspace. I think we should share our tapes. Smoking that Kitten Burst weed. I think we should connect our nodes.
Smoking that shit to make Kitten Burst. Oh, okay. Webcrawler _node. Yo, flying program thingy, I've made the discovery of a lifetime. A giant block of data out on the edge of null space. I've set up a hyperlink to it. Come fly over here and check it out. I'm gonna need your help to crack it open. Webcrawler. Oh, I know you. I met you.
Yeah. I love Webcrawler. I love the uneven amount of backspaces used to make the Webcrawler emote. Is it? Hold on. No, I was just looking at it wrong.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. So the edge, so...
So that
no.
that transport right next to you is the big data block, which is an optional little spot you can go to.
Oh, I thought that was because the message said like at the edge of the thing, so I assumed I had to go into the darkness.
No, you're actually at the edge. Although you can go to the very edge of this world.
What happens then?
I won't tell.
Oh, okay. I'll try it out later.
It's a secret.
Oh, a fucking secret, yay. Ooh.
I am her. I will continue to be her. This shit is everything to me. Yeah.
Everything to me, yeah.
Dude, look at this fucked up cheese.
Yo, web crawler!
Woo!
I love this,
The icon
I
is
love
so
this
fun.
Aqua Teen Hunger Force ass thing. Like, the little... It's great.
That's good. I don't remember what the voice I had for this dude. You can also do it if you want.
Okay.
Since
Flying program sync, you saw my note.
This place is amazing! My name is Happy, by the way. I'm a racing cat, that's why I can fly.
oh,
Happy. Listen, buddy, I need your help. This right here is the biggest chunk of data I've found in months. However, in order to get that juicy data, I need to crack its circuit. I do it myself, but I think you can get the job done faster, and there's no way I could get up there. Here's the deal. I get the ooey gooey data, and you get whatever energy you want.
Deal! I'm getting suck thrown at me right now!
Oh, Happy, no, you're getting beaten.
Whoa! Whee! Woo!
I can't rotate as freely as I could before. That's interesting. Plus, I'm not as. I felt like my body was more jiggly before when I was doing
I think
this.
the specific cutscene you're in.
Yeah, maybe.
Deal! Seems easy enough.
Well, there's a catch. This circuit is a marathon. It's got like 200 nodes in it.
Damn, that's a lot.
200! I can't count that high yet.
Yeah, we only need to connect like 100.
Oh, okay. 100!
God, I love you, Happy.
I love you, Happy. You're
You're the
perfect.
best.
Car battery! Oh, shit. Ow.
Ow. Ow.
Saddle up, cowboy, or would it be saddle up, cowcat? Saddle up, catboy. I'm always saying this. Saddle up, Happy. You got this, buddy.
Alright, I'll give it a try, buddy.
I also think it's funny how the model doesn't really reflect the emotions presented by Happy in the talk sprites.
No, there's a magical girl like texture that you can use for Happy that actually gives him the 3 mouth, and it's awesome.
Oh, I need that.
Yeah, highly recommend. I wish you could more easily pick out your cosmetics, but I get the joke with the gotcha thing. So
card.
That is fair, yeah. Oh, sippy. I don't have a sippy anymore. I already drank all my water. We're gonna do this, and then we'll probably take an e-break, and then I'll do the sippy. So that's illegal.
Awesome.
I drank all the water. I don't
It's
feel like
good.
sharing. I haven't watched Bluey in too long.
Also,
Dude, this
banger
music.
track.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
the music. Holy shit.
Once again, Jam to Go is a fucking genius.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
I'm just head bumping. It's so good.
Yeah, dude, me too. I died! No!
Oh no! Yeah, this is one of those marathon levels where surfing comes in handy a lot. Like being able to skate across surfaces really helps for these kind of things.
Right. I'm like dead.
You're dead.
I need to change my
Gone.
model. And it's Broadcast Queen, who takes a long time to switch to.
A tier. Honestly, Broadcast Queen is gonna be very fitting for this next part.
I do feel like Broadcast Queen is probably my most fitting model for Kitten Burst. Like my VTuber, all my VTubers are fitting because they're all digital entities.
Yeah.
But Broadcast Queen's weird.
Broadcast Queen is weird.
She's a creep. She's a weirdo. She doesn't belong here. Anybody ever actually like listen to the song? It's like a good song.
I actually don't. I don't think I've listened to that one all the way.
It's really good. It's also like it, you know, it's one of those songs where surface level observations by people have made most people think that it's not really about anything that deep. So, but it's actually. Sorry, hold on. Doing things. It's just very strongly about like, oh man, I really just don't feel like I really, yeah, but it's not like, oh man, I'm so weird and wacky. No, it's like, oh, I like fundamentally don't feel like I fit in as a person.
That's
with
so
what, like,
fucking real.
Yeah, no, it's real.
That's such a. I love things that tackle that feeling. That's like, yeah, I get you, man.
Yeah, it's actually good. Pop. Hello. Oh no, I'm partly blocked up by the Blappy.
You're so tall.
I'm very tall.
I'm a little fucking manlet next to you. I'm a true pony now. I'm short as fuck.
Yeah. We'll put Blappy over here instead.
Hi, Blappy! Oh no, Blappy will cover up the icon for when you're talking, right?
Ah, fuck, you're right. Ah, Blappy. Okay, you'll just cover up chat. It's okay.
Yippee!
Hold on, let me see.
The Blappy.
For context. Broadcast.
No, you say your thing.
Broadcast Queen is 9.1 feet.
Oh shit! For real?
Yeah. She's my tallest model.
That's really cool, honestly.
The chat gets Blappy, yeah!
Yay! Blappy belongs to people.
You'll get to hang out with Blappy. Blappy belongs to people. I'm okay. Alright. Broadcast Queen is like 3 Fennec Queens tall. Like 2.5, which is still quite a bit. Or no, wait, hold on. Yeah. Like 2.5. Oh god, this track is really fucking good.
Fun fact, chat, if you buy the second part, the part 2 OST, part D OST on Bandcamp, it comes with fucking Step Mania tracks.
Yeah, you told me about that. That is so fucking awesome.
So if you want to play Step Mania to this, they already have it made. Yeah, no, the fucking Kitten Burst OST is not only the Kitten Burst OST, which makes it good. There's also a Winamp skin, a secret ambient album that you can get, and a Step Mania track.
Oh, an ambient album.
Yeah, those are the ambient tracks in the different worlds.
Right, no, you told me about that actually. Yeah.
It's so cool. I wasn't the one who told you. Fucking Jam2Go in chat told me that.
Yeah.
I was like, please, I want to listen to Animal Station outside of being in the game, and they were like, well, you can.
Just do it.
Yeah,
so just remembered how to drift.
Yeah, this game was made with so much love and care in like everything. It's so cool. We're 1/4 of the way done. Let's go.
This is totally doable. But the question is how many how many ion units or whatever the fuck will we get? What are they called?
Yeah, they're ions. Yeah.
Yay, I win!
You win.
Yay!
You want to put some of these tracks in Bomb Rush Cyberpunk? That'd be awesome, honestly.
Oh fuck yeah, dude! Still need to play that one as well.
Yeah, I need to make more Winamp skins. I'm thinking about it. I really like making Winamp skins. Like,
Nicholas
it's
is
a
a
lot.
taxpayer one.
I should. Wait, I should include one with fucking Beatrix's like OST. That'd be so cool.
Dude.
Wait, your brain, your mind.
It is only able to think of these things because of your brain, your mind.
Oh, symbiosis.
Symbiosis! We should share our minds!
So that's the mind sharing noise.
It's true. Fucking. So just imagine an episode of a Bluey's like sharing her minds.
I think we should share our minds. You learned about texture wrapping? Yippee!
Hell
That
yeah!
rocked.
UV
I was
unwrapping
trying
is
to
the worst
learn.
part.
I was trying to learn how to use.
I learned I hate texture wrapping. Yeah, exactly. Yay! Exactly. One of us.
I was using Blender the other day because I was trying to learn how to do like I think there's a plugin called like Step Tile. It lets you use like 2D textures to create like little like maps. And I was like, oh, I want to use this, and I found out it hasn't been updated since Blender 2.9, and I was like, oh man. They were like, oh, but there's a fork. It works on Blender 3.9. Oh, awesome.
Oh, nice.
Oh, fuck, I'm on Blender 4.1.
No.
Fuck.
Damn
It
it.
doesn't work again. So I have to see how I can get it to work because I really want to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I also learned that I have a lot to learn about putting a single texture on a cylinder shape.
That's harder than you would think, huh?
It's harder than you would think. I don't know if I ever showed you the Morgana Mighty Beans thing that I did.
You did, yes.
Ago, but
I remember I was like, it's like some sort of beans.
It's like a bean.
It's like some sort of beans.
Yeah, I want to get more into 3D modeling. I need to master all the. Oh shit!
After this, shut up! Shut up! I have 69 right now. That's funny.
It is funny. That's jokes.
Thank you. It's nice to get information, you know.
Yeah, I need to learn 3D modeling so I can complete my like indie game developer like Infinity Gauntlet.
Yo, did you say gauntlet?
Oh shit!
Yo! Whoa!
Oh my! Whoa!
Anytime I think about like whoa, I'm just thinking about Findle from Ina. Do you know that?
I do actually. Yeah.
Whoa! Whoa!
I fucking love
It's a good
Ina.
sound.
I need to rewatch the shorts.
Oh, I should. I also should do that, even though I do it frequently. I love Ina so fucking much. I've got both her plushies. I've got multiple shorts. I've got shirts. I mean, I've got an hourglass dog plushie. I've got a poster.
That's great.
Pins.
Hell yeah!
It's such a good series. Broadcast Queen was built in anticipation of Dream Barbecue, actually.
Oh, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
That rocks.
Now I'm just waiting for a Dream Barbecue to come out. I was at the time I was like, oh gosh, I sure hope I can finish her on time.
It's supposed to have come out like a couple times now, right?
Kinda. I don't think they ever gave us specific like singular dates. They just gave us like, oh, this month probably, and then we're like, oh, never mind, sorry. And now we're just waiting for them to to give us something. We're just waiting.
Yeah.
I don't blame them or anything though.
No, certainly not. I also like that the timer itself is reflected on some of the surfaces.
Yeah, it's
fun.
very cool.
I like that it's like an in-universe thing that Happy can see.
Mm-hmm. It's the best kind of UI. It's like, it's the complete opposite of the fucking stupid thing that Nintendo's doing with its UI now. Well, not just Nintendo, but Nintendo's doing a lot where they're just trying to make it as minimalist as possible. Like, fuck off, no.
Like, no, that's lame.
That's lame. Give me the Metroid Prime UI. I love the Metroid Prime UI. It looks so cool.
If your UI doesn't have shading, it's not a real user interface.
The reach number, more like the E number.
Hey.
E.
You know, I'm gonna take the time that we are taking for the e-break. I'm just gonna go like shave and take my meds.
Oh yeah, no. Well, yeah, it's for your meds, of course.
Hell yeah.
I always tell
will be
people
taking my
make sure to do
estrogen
your
at the same
meds.
time as you.
Hell yeah, we're syncing up.
Sync it up.
Syncing up.
I can never get over fucking. I'm like, yippee! I'm taking estrogen. I fucking hate spironolactone. That shit tastes like bad mint.
Oh, I use gel.
Nice.
Mhm.
I'm girl pilled TM.
I'm girl gooped.
What was that one post that was like, the fact that the estrogel exists feels fake. It's like, yeah, there's the slime that makes you girl.
No, what do you mean? It's the realest thing, dude.
Yeah, it's the realest thing to ever exist.
So he's a goopy girl. I mean, look at my arm. Look at my arm right now.
True.
I'm literally made of goop.
Union. Yeah. This is they give God's strongest warriors spironolactone's most disgusting pills.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
Oh, we leveled up. Oh, I think I already leveled up also earlier this stream, so I'd probably take care of that. Well, I've got a bunch of keys. Where'd I get those from? That's crazy.
Whoa. Let's see what we got. It's...
What is it? Analyzing.
It's...
What is it?
City of Less Waste Management annual collections per material type. It's literally trash. Also, real quick, yeah, Broadcast Queen does count as a slime girl. Also, technically,
Yay.
as a you could count her as a Dullahan also because the head is detachable.
Awesome.
With her, I was just sort of like, how many things can I cram into one character? She's Dutch. She's a TV head. She's a Dullahan. She's a slime girl. She is like a 90s computer render thing. She has a stomach mouth, you know.
She's Dutch.
She's Dutch. Well, yeah, she's especially Dutch because I've got tulip patterns and I got a bunch of Dutch TV shows and stuff.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
You know, there's specifically like things that I used to watch when I was little.
Oh, that's so cute. Oh my god.
So yeah. And also the face itself is it's based on like the European. You know how you have like the TV network test card?
Yeah.
So this is the European one.
That's fun. That's fun.
Yeah. Did someone say Ina? A bit ago, yeah. If she was really Dutch, she'd be wearing a dodo carcass. From the 90s, not like the fucking 20s, the 1920s.
The 1600s.
It's literally trash.
It's incredible. What a fight!
What?
I can't thank you enough, Happy. Always good to have friends out there at the dudes.
We're friends?
Yeah, use some space, will ya? It's gonna take a while to dig through all this delectable data.
Don't you web crawlers just index sites when you find them and move on?
Well, excuse me, princess. This is the first new site I found in months. I'm gonna savor it. I love you, web crawler, you stupid doofus.
Yeah, this is fun, dude. There we go. We'll leave this area and then we'll do the e-break.
Sounds great. I love web crawler. What a little dork.
Yeah. Love Buckets Queen's happy smiley eye. Thanks.
Love a good Deke Zelda cartoon reference.
Me too. I think when I first learned about Deke because of like YouTube poops and stuff, I was like, can they call it that? Like I like
That's
just
so
learned
real.
what the word dick was, you know?
Awesome. You can't be saying fat chef Dutch baby. You can't be saying that.
Oh my god. Phew. Okay, so we're going to take. I think I did my hands wrong. I think I accidentally have Fennec Queen's hand set up.
Awesome.
Let me see. Yeah, definitely. I'll fix that. I'll fix that during the break, I think. We are going to take a 20 or so minute break so I can do my fuck my hands. So I can do my estrogel. During this time, I'm not gonna gesture with my hands. I'm gonna try not to, even though that's like a stimming thing. The short hands. Yeah, she's got little arms compared to the size of her hands. Like more so than other Sonic characters because she's got the giant gauntlets. Anyway, we're gonna take a 20 or so minute break during which I will do my estrogel. During the time, we'll listen to some nice music. If you guys have any medicine that you have to take, please remember to do so. Bunk it.
Yay!
Yeah.
Send it down
Also,
to 6 pills.
so did you say 6?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I got a lot of estrogen. I got spironolactone. I got another one, and then I got my anxiety and my ADHD.
Jesus Christ. I'm taking, aside from the gel, I'm only taking 3, and 2 of those are the same thing, and 1 is just like a vitamin D supplement.
I'm God's strongest medicine delivery warrior.
We all know this.
This is known.
This is known. So yeah, please remember to take your medicine if you have to. Remember to stay hydrated, get some snackies, stretch your leggies, and we'll be back in about 20 minutes. See you guys soon.
See you soon.
Bye bye. And Punked, you will also be muted during the break. Okay.
Okay, bye.
it going out there, people? I'm coming to you live from LADY Radio. One look out the window and you can tell it's gonna be another beautiful day here in paradise. Gentle breeze, inviting waters, and not a cloud in the sky. Hope you've got some time to stick around because that's not all we're excited about today, folks. We are elated to be bringing you a very special and exclusive premiere off the brand new album from the folks at TWRP, Return to Wherever.
egg.
There's one place we all share. One place we all call home. It's all we've ever known. A blue dot in a mound of dust reminds an orbit we see the scope. A new perspective that gives us
martial prowess that will stop your heart. Epic power, discipline, nuclear moves that always win.
I'm stepping out of the pocket, baby. I am a master cause I practice atomic karate. The color of my belt is blacker than night. The enemy see me and run in fright. I will not hesitate to use it too. Of anyone who stands between me and you. There is only one thing I'm good at my karate. It's when you dance and shake and rock that body. I see you moving, now you flow like a river. You do it so good, girl, that you make me shiver. Slip me out of the pocket, baby. I am a master cause I practice daily and atomic karate.
心に迫る戦士の知恵、神秘の技、そうして勇敢な戦い、その壮大な力と鍛錬が核の戦いを勝利へと導く。
If we join forces, we would set the world right. Imagine you and me, go on and it'd be tight. I could be your love sensei if you be my atomic karate. I slip the atom with the high kick, baby. I am a master 'cause I practice daily. Atomic karate.
Hello, everyone.
Whoa!
I was prepared.
You were so fucking ready.
Car battery!
That's true.
Ow.
I wasn't ready for that one.
I have something awesome to show you.
Oh, do you really now? What is
I
it?
do.
Give me just a moment. I'm putting on different music. Okay. Good. I'll show chat also this cool and good gift that you have created here.
How cool.
Behold. This is Punkit.
Trip fan.
This is you?
That's true.
I love the meme maker just zooms in on Broadcast Queen's thighs. Yeah, I'm too tall. It doesn't adjust for whoever's there, it just takes Gauntlet Queen as the default, so for me you just see my thighs. For Queen of Fennec, you just see the upper half of her head.
I was gonna say, this is twice now that I've been on a stream where the meme maker does not fit your body in any way. I'll be right back. I need to get something to wash down the spirolactone because that shit went down bad and I can taste it.
Oh, God.
I'll be one moment.
Yeah, that's fair. I fucking hate when you try to take meds and then they're like, I think I'm just gonna dissolve right here in your mouth, actually. It's the worst. I feel like for me it's worse than for Broadcast or for Queen of Fennec though, because at least for Queen, like Fennec can use like her eyes to emote. Like what the fuck am I supposed to do? I either have hands visible in the meme thing or I don't. That's like all I've got. So I hold them between my lips until I get water. I just don't put them in my mouth until I have water. Oh wait, speaking of which, I haven't taken my pills yet because I was too busy during the break to remember to do that. Hold the peace sign. Well, it doesn't work. The peace sign is up here. So
Okay,
like,
I'm back.
hi, welcome back. I can't hold up a peace sign for the meme maker because my hands are too high up. You know?
Just give me bunny ears.
I can't. You're too low.
Sad.
You're too far down. I'm so sorry.
I countered the bad medicine taste by just eating one handful of chocolate chips.
That'll do it.
No match for the humble chocolate chip warrior.
If Broadcast Queen emotes purely with her hands, does this mean she's Italian? No, it means I'm autistic.
I think
different.
I think autistic Italian people pretty much fucking like Naruto ninjutsu.
I was gonna say, yeah. Ninjutsu is real to them.
Yeah, they're pulling it off every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Meow. Meow. So-called free thinkers when happy.
I died.
She died.
Goodbye, Punkit. It's your stream now. Whoa, what the fuck is that?
Hey everybody, hi, I'm Punkit. I'm not playing the video game, we're just watching. It's a React channel now.
Oh no. Can I talk with this? No? Okay, but ow.
This is always happening to me.
Anytime I want to use a computer, I just start knocking it around.
Pause too big.
Yo,
So sad.
is that shit lore? Let's see it.
Oh yeah. I missed this my first go around.
Oh. Lurpa, report 3. Punching through to the other side.
Wow.
It sounds... Yeah, it's real. Also kind of sounds like the title to a Blue Oyster Cult song a little bit.
Oh, true.
So true. DNF, Lurpa, X-Town. Ooh, X-Town. That's a cool place to live.
I'm Dan F. Lurpa, X-Town from the Dell.
From the Dell. X-Town is, it sounds like a cool place to live, but it's actually Elon Musk's new town that he's trying to build. He tried to just call it X, but they said no.
They said no.
They said no. You have to call it X Town, if anything.
Meme Maker, they said no.
They said no. Also,
I
yeah,
got my
Pumpkin
water
Queen
now.
is a valid alt name. Yay! I really ought to wear my autism is good actually shirt more. That's a bit small. Wearing a size too small can actually look good depending on what you're going for, I think.
Yeah, I can't because I'm so texture oriented, but I respect it immensely.
That's fair. That's fair.
I am not like a 2XL person, but I'm always wearing my 2XL shirts because that shit's comfy. So
That is true. There are like days where I'm like, damn, I'm not gonna do anything today. I'm not gonna be on stream. I'm not gonna have anyone over. I'm not gonna go outside at all. I have a specific shirt with my Gauntlet Queen logo on it that I intentionally got in a way too big size. I'm gonna wear that one. Yeah, just chilling.
hell yeah.
Like, I prefer to get dressed up even if I'm not going anywhere because it gives me like gender euphoria to dress up real nice.
Yeah. I get you.
But sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do anything today.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm like, I'm not gonna go out, but I am gonna wear a nice skirt while I work.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've got all my bracelets and my fishnet gloves and choker and everything, you know.
Hell yeah. Shirt too small to make boobs look good. Hell yeah. I can't, but I respect it immensely.
No, exactly. That's like wearing crop tops. What that's like. It's very good. I just need to get better boobs. Anyway,
Gotta work on those.
yeah.
Back to the mines.
Punches through the other side. Summary. Listen, I know this is probably my last day, but I wanted to clear up what I was trying to do. Science is built on failures. We have to test things that won't work to confirm that they don't. That's science. Running a meaningless test to confirm a meaningless hypothesis is most of what we do here. So, we were all coming up with ways to get to the etheric plane of existence, and I had a pretty good idea. What if we could punch into it using a cyber gauntlet? Fuck!
Yo!
Yes, dude!
This game was made for you.
This game was made
for you.
for... Yes, dude! Hell yeah! Fuck yeah! I have cyber gauntlets. I showed you.
Yeah, you could punch into the etheric plane of existence.
I could do it. And I'd bring it. To be crystal clear, I hypothesized that this would not work, but the potential of it encouraged me to follow this lead. I borrowed some tech from the binaural audio team, with permission, and built a gauntlet that would release a gamma shock wave on impact with a surface. I tested the device on several items in the lab, and I swear some of them started flickering like they were moving at a rapid pace. Unfortunately, before my experiment could be continued further, I was forcibly restrained, and my cyber gauntlet was confiscated. Well, come on, nobody ever likes it when we punch stuff.
Man, lame.
Lame. Have they ever heard of sharing? Share your stuff and let me punch it.
Share our toys.
Please don't fire me. I'll pay for the damages out of pocket. At least let me have it back. So where is it now?
Well,
Is this big shape the gauntlet? Yo, it totally is a hand. I don't think it's the gauntlet though, but it is very cool. They're getting in the way of the future. How dare! The future of me punching the shit out of everything. For science.
for science.
At the
Bluey
Bluey.
Lab. We should share our
We should
research.
share our research. That's really good.
At the Bluey communism, we should share our resources.
Okay, wait. I think I'm gonna try something. Well.
Yeah, the tube might not be beneficial for tight maneuvers like the
Maybe not, huh? Crazy. The tube might be not beneficial in some situations. The tube.
Yeah, see?
The tube. But we love the tube.
We do love the tube. We do love the tube.
The tube.
The tube.
The tube is so funny.
It's really making itself apparent.
Mm-hmm. You have chosen me, and you shall remember this. I did the very best, right?
You got pretty close.
Hello.
Whoa!
Kitty! What's going on? What's happened? Whoa, the TV. Ooh. That looks menacing. The tube be like, have you heard of the tube? I love when technology advances, so we go from shooting is the most effective way to kill back to beat them to death with your hands. It's just more fun. It's just more fun. And it disorients the enemy more if you're like up in their face, beating the shit out of them and breaking all their ribs and stuff.
Yeah.
No.
It's more disorienting that way.
It appears something with a large ion signature has awoken in the ruins. 'Tis likely we shall find the lost files there. Go check it out, cat.
I'm on it!
Go Happy.
Yay, go Happy.
Go Happy.
Go, go, go!
Oh god, that looks so cool. I do think it's just so funny that Polly's language setting does not actually dictate how they can talk, but just how they are expected to talk.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
It's really good.
Wee.
Oh,
Oh, you haven't leveled up yet.
yes, alright. I've got 3 whole pointsies. I'll do some whisker length actually. I haven't been impacting as much this stream, so I think we're good. Some more top speed and some more this.
Some more tube.
Tube? That tube?
Oh my god, wait! You're using tube energy!
I'm using
My
Tubergy. Huh. Hello, special TV with Kibby Cap on top. And a beautiful music. Oh. Hello? You got a bow tie? I don't trust you. But I'd like to trust you.
See why I said that broadcast queen was fitting?
Yeah. Ooh.
Hello?
Hello?
Who are you?
Hello? Who are you? Hello?
Hi. I'm happy.
I'm who? Happy. Hello? I'm happy.
Huh? No, I'm happy.
Huh? Huh? Hi, happy.
Are you just copying what I'm saying?
Copy happy? Happy copy?
Oh my god. A friend of yours, boss? I don't know this one. This was
I
not.
should do the English for this.
I feel like you should.
I will. Copy happy? Happy copy!
If you made a train themed alt, would that be Railroad Queen? I feel like that's very well possible. Engine Queen would also be a good option.
Engine Queen.
Yeah. Coal train. Coal. Engine Queen or Railroad Queen would probably be the most likely ones.
I think Railroad Queen implies you have dominion over railroads, which is very fun.
Well, I thought about it because people often like assume that Gauntlet Queen and the other ones are like actual queens, which we're not. It's and so a good comparison would be like a wrestling name, you know?
So true.
Mhm.
Okay.
Except for Coral Queen, who is an actual queen, but she's a queen of a dead kingdom, so it doesn't matter. A dead kingdom that she stumbled upon after it was already dead, and then the magic inherent in the crown and gauntlets just decided, like, I guess you're the queen now because you're the only sapient being here. And she's like,
yeah,
oh,
but it's just
okay.
Still count.
Yeah. She had a happy moment of, oh, okay. Anyway.
Saber, what is this thing?
I don't know. Oh, God.
I'm Copycat, you. Hi.
Guess its name is Copycat? Maybe we can teach it some words.
I love you, freaky little TV head thing.
This is very good. I love how unnerving this is. Something about null space, something practical, or something about racing. I mean, we're happy, so I feel like we would talk about racing.
Yeah.
Hi! I'm a racing cat. I like going fast and winning races. I mean, I haven't won a race yet, but my time is getting better. How about you? What are you exactly, Copycat? How long have you been in that sand?
I am Copycat. I am copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a.
Oh, that always goes well.
How long have I been? How much time? Oh, doors.
I'm not really sure what it's trying to say. Maybe give it some more words to work with. Let's just fight it.
No. We need to talk to it.
No, of course not. We don't have a reason to fight it.
We will be
Happy's just like.
friends!
Happy's just like, I quit blood.
My bloodlust! Die by my little paws! Violence!
Everyone knows each time you copy something, it gets better. Nothing is ever lost in the process.
No, never.
Never
I love
ever.
this creepy photo. It's so cool.
Yeah, it is. It's really, really good. And the show pad. So true. Let's
Whoa.
talk about null space now.
Why were you in the sand? Do you live in that castle up there?
Sand? That castle is you castle.
It's not mine. Do you mean Saber?
Saber? Copycat know you. You know Copycat.
Ooh, the voice is coming. They're coming into their island. I have no idea who you are, buddy.
No idea? You no idea, Copycat? Oh, this one's so creepy. I love that photo.
Really though, these renders are so fucking awesome. Got any other ideas? Let's say something practical.
Bully! Say the top 20 most common words.
The be, to, of, and a, in, that, have, I, it, for, not, on, with, he, her, as, you, do.
Huh? What is say words?
Oh, that's Polly. They're a robot.
Are you a robot? A robot cat?
No? Wait. Am I?
Oh,
Happy is a robot cat. Happy is a copy of Copycat.
What do you mean?
Huh? Didn't I tell you I'm a racing cat, not a robot?
No idea. No idea. How much time? How much time?
This is so fucking scary. I love this. Polly,
It's so
are you
cool.
able to... That's so cool. We're a robot cat, ideal TBH. Kinda, yeah. Honestly, though. Polly, are you able to pull its data yet? False. It's blocking everything I send at it. Alright, we'll need to drain its energy. Happy, you'll have to challenge it.
Do I really need to fight this thing?
You don't have to fight it, just avoid whatever it throws at you and survive long enough for us to breach its defenses. Oh god. Couldn't we just be friends? Not ideal.
Yeah.
Where? Also, yeah, so Fortitude Jury isn't on the list of 20 most said words. Together, we can all fix this. Let's say Yuri 6 billion times to increase the average. Let's do it, everyone.
Yes.
And spooky boss fight time. Yeah, I do love a spooky boss fight, so I guess I'm happy about this. But also, I feel bad.
What about this?
I feel the camera.
Long cat isn't ideal.
No, I don't think it is, but I'm gonna try anyway. Once. It's going well, as you can tell. Oh, the audio, the music.
Yeah, this is a banger track.
Fuck. Meh.
DNF. Oh, he went flying!
Alright, let's not be along for this one. Yeah.
I love you for Brother Cap.
Yeah.
Yes!
Yeah!
This game is cool as fuck, I agree.
It is.
Yeah, Copycat samples words, so its music is full of samples. It's such a good fucking...
Oh, yeah.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. Sit down.
This time I will do it in one go and not get hit a single time.
You got this. And you get the slowdown tech, it'll just be easier too.
I'm doing it if I have to. Also, I'm going to try to make use of all this space that I've got instead of only a little bit. It's got a new follower, thanks so much. I'm not going to look at the name right now. But thank you.
It's got, I love the VHS like tape spooling off of it. It's so
Yes, that's what it is. No! But I'm awesome and a gamer! How could this happen? They must have done something wrong when making the game.
Cool. Yeah. 3D bullet hell? Yeah, no, it's really cool.
Even Gem to Go isn't perfect as it turns out.
Yeah, SMH. Jim to Go made a game where Zoe would get hit. It's impossible.
Make the best pets, madam.
Make the best good stuff.
Stray cats make the best pets, madam.
Ooh.
Oh shit!
Oh fuck! Oh,
my
and,
God,
and the screen being like cat, like cut out cat bits with a face.
And it's doing data moshing? That's so cool.
Oh, this shit rules! Oh, it's so good! This game is so fucking good! It's kind of crazy.
And a little epic. I love saying shit like that. Oh, I was too focused on the original fight to notice that it's like a bunch of like photo cats. That's so cool.
I also like that Happy doesn't want to fight, so they don't. Dang it!
Yeah. These edibles ain't shit. Whoa, whoa.
Okay, I'm awesome or whatever. Ooh. No.
Nice.
Oh. Oh, the things from the screen, it's all coming back.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so cool. This is so cool. I love this game.
Literally, peak game. It's peak.
It's peak.
The skeleton appear. Yeah. Putting in chat. The skeleton appears.
Oh. Oh.
It's Garfin. It's Garfin everywhere.
Oh no. Yay, Pwned.
Fun, you did it. You did it.
Yay.
Happy night.
I call this shit Everest because it's peak.
Is Happy not a copy?
I'm not a copycat. I'm sorry for draining your energy, but we need it for a mission. We could still be friends, though.
No idea. I am her friend.
Saber, are you sure you don't know them?
It's been a long time since I built this site. My memories from the time are hazy. There was someone else there, though. I wasn't building the castle for me, it was for my imaginary friend.
Friend? You remember me?
I don't remember you like this, but it's good to see you again.
I've been here collecting memories in the dust.
Oh.
You should join our crew.
Yay! I'm so happy. We could use an archivist if you want.
Archivist. Okay. Okay.
Okay, Rhodes! Bully is gonna be stoked when we find a new crew member.
I don't know about that. Archivist is not one of the critical roles that we needed to be filled. Also, we need users to fill the roles, not the specter. Not the specter.
Not the specter it is, I think is what it's going for.
Yeah, I think so. Alas, welcome aboard.
The crying Polyphase is so funny.
Me too.
Thank you, Happy. Happy friend.
Yeah.
So true. Happy is friend.
Happy is so friend. That's the realest shit. I love how Saber just loves cats. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love
Why
you,
wouldn't
Saber.
they?
They just like me for real.
I think we're done with this place. Let's head back to the ship and figure out our next target.
Oh shit! My class is starting. 1 second. Let me.
fuck.
Let me look that up while we're doing this.
Is it another? You're just gonna.
Same one as last week.
Right.
I'm
Cool.
just
Cool.
not gonna participate.
Awesome.
There we go.
Okay.
Launch meeting. And I need to tell it to not use my phone or video. I do not need my professor hearing me do.
My toys.
My toys. My toys.
My toys. Yay.
He's not letting me in. He's not letting me in.
No.
No.
I have to pretend to be there. No.
No. I have to kind of half hear what he's talking about. It's a film seminar class. You have to apply to a job to get the class like A grade. I won't. I don't want a job in the film industry. I hope they reject my application.
Just make it shitty on purpose.
I should. Wow. Why am I not being let in? What's going on?
I don't know.
What's happening? All right. Well, I guess we'll do this in the meantime.
Okay.
Hey, what's the next site I'm heading to?
You can chill for a bit. Polly is running a scan to find potential targets. It'll take some time.
Oh, they're chilling.
Okay.
They're chilling. So.
Awesome.
So good. So, Kat, how do you like cyberspace?
It's bigger than I thought it was. I was always so laser focused on the next checkpoint. I never really stopped to look around. But
I love Happy.
Yeah. It's just switching camera angles and Happy's just still
spinning, yay!
I thought about. Wait, no. Yo, Jen to Go is here. Yay, hi!
Yo, Jam to Go, we love your video game.
I love your video game so fucking much, dude! The fight against Copycat was amazing. Copycat in general is amazing. I love them.
Oh, yeah,
So
I love
good.
Copycat. I want more for them. I want to be able to talk to them more. They're so
Oh,
cool.
They're so cool.
Yeah, well, I thought all the sites the users built were in this big web like a giant city, but you can't even see the other sites. There's just this emptiness between everything. It's kind of scary.
I love that scared happy face. So
Me
cute.
too. It's so cute. I want to comfort them. I love the emptiness. There's nowhere in Meat Space you can get a view like this anymore. We fill it all up with mega malls, skyscrapers, super highways, and parking decks. Our cities aren't even made for people anymore. It's designed for cars to live in. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn, that's real as fuck.
The Netherlands is... Not all the cities are like that, luckily.
Yeah,
But,
I'm in Washington,
yeah.
so I'm also lucky, but damn.
Yeah. No, just anytime I see a city that's like that, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? how did you let it get this? I mean, no, but it wasn't anybody. It wasn't the people's fault, but like,
Yeah, it was like a couple guys' fault.
it was a couple guys' faults. So how haven't we killed those couple guys? I much prefer this. Actually, it's even more empty than you think. That sky isn't even real. It's a projection on a giant cube surrounding this ship. We had these skyboxes to our sites. Without it, there's just this uncanny void. Watch.
Whoa! How did you do that?
My friend Commodore taught me. We were in this hacker crew back in the day called Shiver. We would find all sorts of exploits like this. I kind of just think about moving myself, but then apply that input to the sun instead, if that makes any sense.
Can I try?
Sorry, Kat, I think it's just a thing that users can do. Unless... IDK, give it a shot.
Wow!
Wow!
I'm so powerful! I hold the power of the sun inside of my little paws!
Oh, the piano. It's the same one as Burning Bright.
Ah.
I'm doing it!
Whoa!
That energy we've been collecting must have made me more powerful! Feel my incredible power!
Sure.
It's-
Other Happy is just like,
Well, I'm so cool and powerful because of the sun. I'm not gonna think about it. Hey, Saber, why do you need this energy anyway? To make your cyber ship faster?
wow, no. Well, it is to power up the ship's ion drive, but not to make it any faster. It's for... You might have noticed that users haven't been showing up to your races in person anymore, right?
Now that you mention it, yeah, there used to be a crowd.
Back then, cyberspace was the new frontier. Traveling here became easy. It was like a gold rush with infinite gold. People didn't want to just see cyberspace through a terminal, they wanted to travel here to create settlements or just explore. There was no scarcity. If you wanted to make something, you just had to imagine it, and if you made something cool, you could give copies to other people for free. That emptiness out there was hope. A hope that we could fill it with something worth living in this time.
What's hope?
Everyone lost sight of what we were building. We all sectioned off into our own visions of utopia. We debated, then we argued, then we flamed, and then we burned everything to the ground. people QQ'd and never came back. The sad face.
Yeah.
I tried sticking around for a while, but it just wasn't the same, so I left this place too. But Pando didn't quit. They have their own vision of utopia, more mega malls and super highways. Turn a library into a bookstore. When I heard about what they were building, I had to come back one last time. There was one thing left to burn down. Are you even listening? This is important. Wee! Yay! I'm spinning! Wee! Experience the width of a god! Ba, 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 ba. Hey, I was still playing with that! Oh, I love Epi so much. I wonder if there's different dialogue if you stay still the entire time.
What was that?
I wonder if there's a different dialogue if you just stay still the whole time while she's talking.
Oh, maybe, but I've never been strong enough not to do it.
How could you not? You have to stim.
I have to stim.
You have
It's
to
a
stim.
stim game.
Yeah, dude.
This game is toys.
This game is toys. This job you're doing for me, the ion energy you've been collecting, it's not just to power the ship's ion drive. I'm turning this ship into a weapon. An ion cannon. Fuck yeah, dude!
I love Saber. Look at the spark in her
Look at the
eyes.
spark in their eyes. Oh, I love Saber so much. I love these characters.
So cool.
Cool! Can I keep playing with the sun now?
Ruffles, sure happy.
Whee! Whee! Nighttime.
Oh, I
Daytime.
love the burning bright piano. It's such a good theme.
It's very nice. I like this scene a lot.
Woo!
You're just playing with it. This is toys.
This is toys. Whee! Oh. I love this game.
I love this game too. This is a very special game to me. I'm glad I get to share it with you.
I'm glad you're sharing it with me. And I understand.
You understand.
I understand. The fact I get to control the sun during this is also just very clever because it keeps you more engaged than a player usually might be during just sort of like some environmental shots like this.
Yeah.
This gaming toys would make a great message. I agree, Vexfidel.
Yeah. Oh, that's gorgeous. I love the hexagonal like lens flare.
It's very good. Nighttime. I love the skybox too.
So cool.
Just it really gives this idea that like the ship is somewhere like between monitored spaces and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Stimming is good for neurodivergent people. It can be dangerous not to. Yeah, because you get a bunch of built up energy and stuff and you can lash out.
What did you just say?
Kirikat says it's good for neurodivergent people to stim and it can be dangerous not to.
True. Oh, I see you seen
Hello?
Flappy jam to go.
Yeah, Flippy!
This is my Bluey Kitten Burst crossover OC. Also, let's go!
Woo! I love you to literally put your other OC in here also. It's so good.
Bounce to me. Let's go.
In a box! Yay!
This is so awesome.
You can't see, but I'm jamming.
The iPod thing.
Yeah.
Very good. I've been wanting to make a like a Gauntlet Queen iPod dance animation.
That'd be so good.
I was talking about it with a friend, and we thought about making them with our models. So for those who don't know, this is like also made by Gem to Go. This whole song and music video and stuff, and it's very good.
It's so good. This is my favorite part of it too. A little breakdown here. I think this is one of the Stepmania tracks. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Just noodling. It's just soup. It's just soup.
Oh, spooky.
It's very spooky.
Badger.
Yeah! Oh, they made it! Space Engineer viewers, you came at such a great time. We're watching a wonderful music video. Hello. I'm currently broadcast screen, but always Zoe. Yippee! I am an artist of various types and a variety streamer. I make my models and everything and stuff. And we're playing Kitten Burst, which is a fucking amazing game. I love it so much. Pew pew pew! Space invasion! Oh! I think we're gonna die, everyone. We're gonna get killed by aliens. Anyway, Kat, what are you watching? Are you downloading videos to my ship? Please, please tell me you didn't install a toolbar.
I didn't. I was taking a nap. It just showed up. It's kind of catchy though.
It is. Oh.
It is, yeah.
Oh,
You
it's still
can
there.
faintly hear it.
It's still in the background. Okay, good.
Captain, I have completed.
Wait, this is someone else.
Captain, I have completed the diagnostics check.
Weren't you on a different ship before? What's going on here?
What's going on here?
I didn't ask you to do that, robot.
Wait, who's that?
Yeah. We lost Polly? No. Oh, I lost Polly, so I had to get a new bot. This one was linked to the ship, so I just had to recall it.
It seems the ship's ping beacon and Pando reports are offline. Would you like me to enable them?
What? No, cancel. Bad bot.
What do you mean you lost Polly? Where is he?
Well, while you were taking cat naps and downloading videos, I sent Polly out to scout some potential sites for us to plunder. Never heard back from him. His pathfinding probably broke. Oh, egg.
Are you sure you don't want me to enable these features? Sharing data with Pando will help us improve your experience and will allow us to deliver personalized ads.
Oh my god, shut the fuck up. It's too real. A Space NG, Regna Squid starting the third egg stack, and Dr. Rudy G. Numpet, thank you all for the eggs. There's a U-bot that's stuck here. Woo! Okay. Yes, bot, I'm sure. Keep them off.
Where did you send him?
It's just a bot, Happy. This one is just as good. Look. No, this one's worse. Molly, said language to pirate.
I'm afraid Easter egg languages are deprecated in the current version.
Oh my god.
That's just fucking awful.
I hate you, Molly.
Molly, you're the worst. Boo!
We hate your pussy!
Boo! We hate your pussy.
What? Why?
Pando Labs director Hugo has banned Easter eggs in order to streamline our user experience. I apologize for the inconvenience.
Oh my god.
Would you like me to send a report to Pando about this complaint?
Yeah, it's really just like Easter egg voices are deprecated in the current version, and Saber just goes like, "Happy, I need you to find, I need to find Polly right now.
I need to do my funny pirate roleplay or else."
No. Okay, you're right. We need to find Polly. Yeah. I'm going to send this one back.
Wait, would you like to fill out a survey?
No, that's gone.
God. Get killed,
So-
Molly. We hate your pussy.
We hate your pussy. You know what pussy we don't hate?
Polly!
Pollies! I was also gonna say happy, because
Polly!
kitty, because, you know,
Oh, true.
pussy.
Wait, sorry.
Pussy cat.
I was thinking about Polly's pussy.
Good job. Good job, Plunkett.
Thank you. I'm expert at jokes.
Yeah, true.
Where did he go? I'll go look for him.
I sent him to the site called Scratch. It's the one my buddy Commodore runs. Or the one he used to run? I'm not sure what happened to it.
I'm on it.
Yes.
However, we've already been going for nearly 3.5 hours. So I think maybe we should just do some ship stuff and use the keys we've collected and then call it quits for today.
Yeah, sure, if you want to.
Yeah, because then we can start next time with a new world, you know? And
True. But I have to wait a week. Oh.
I know, me too, but don't worry. Next time, I'm sure we won't spend a full hour talking about other stuff before we start playing the game.
True.
Hello?
Oh, we've done this
Yes,
already. I
there
thought there was new stuff.
No,
Oh.
there's not.
Okay.
Oh, I'm happy.
Who?
Meow.
You know who's behind you?
Who's behind me? There! Yay!
Hi.
Hello, Happy. This is quite the archive. I have much to read, much to sort, much to watch, much to discover, much too much. Too much. Much too much. Much too much.
Oh god.
You're okay. You don't have to go through it all at once. It might be easier to manage if you split it up into parts.
Aww.
Parts, yes, much to parts. Okay.
You're so helpful.
Hello, Happy.
That's
Quite
okay,
the
it's the
archive.
same.
Yeah, okay, I think this is the only line of dialogue Copycat gets anymore, which makes me very
What?
sad.
No!
I know, they're so cool!
Jam to go, you gotta fix this!
Jam to go, I don't know if my copy's bugged, but this is all Copycat would say for the rest of the game, and that makes me so sad because they're so cool.
They're so cool. Please, for us, for your biggest
For
fans.
us, please. I'll drop Lappy again.
That'd be so awesome.
They get one more line at the very end. Yippee! Okay, cool.
Yay! Okay, good. Can I have one more line though?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to develop a thing. They're so cool.
Yeah. Can they can they say I love Pumpkin and Gunlock with my best friends?
Yeah, we're best friends with Copycat. It's our buddy. Such a cool design. I love the boss fight.
Yeah, no, it was fucking incredible.
Seriously genius to have language sampling and actual music sampling in their the boss track. It's so good.
Yeah, it's extremely fucking good. I love it. And there's those like old renders and they're incorporated into the boss fight. So fucking good.
It's peak. It's peak.
It's extremely peak. Hello there. Have you played a platform in modern times that has a retro feel called Cavern of Dreams? I have not played it. I do know of it. I've heard it's very good.
It should say, whatever you do, don't look up to how to say it. Much too much.
I have much too much knowledge.
Much too much knowledge.
I never should have learned about the Dutch language.
Copycat flashes like an old render of the Dutch fucking flag. Oh,
that's so funny.
Hello.
It was Dracula, right?
Yeah, it's Dracula voice.
Oh, do you want me to do it?
I can do it too.
Back again to try your luck.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what we get. I hope we get cotton candy. Hey, trans colors, very nice. Okay, we'll be using that one next. Hell yeah.
Said language to Dutch, prohibited.
Magni. Paperclip. Business professional. Said language to Dutch. I don't wanna.
Cross-eyed.
Cross-eyed.
You gotta put on cross-eyed for a little bit.
Budget VR. Okay, yeah, that's gonna be something funny. I know. Badger. Oh, it's an American badger. Can we get a European badger also, please, 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 please? European badgers look much more stylized. It's fun. Third eye. See everything. Okay.
I don't know if I actually know that one.
Tuxedo.
Tuxedo.
Oh my god.
Oh, a real baby.
A real puppy. Is that your cat?
Mr. Darcy. That's good. Oh my god.
That's so cute.
That's so fun.
Tortoise shell. Torties.
Torties.
Torties. Red panda.
Yes.
Yay.
That's the real deal, Mr. Darcy cat.
Ooh.
So cute.
Well, whose cats are these? Am I missing something? Or are these like, who's Mr. Darcy?
I think Jam has multiple cats? Question mark?
Oh, nice, nice, nice,
That would
nice.
make most sense to me. I mean, I suppose you can clear up the confusion now.
Raccoon. Trash panda.
You got so many keys.
Yeah, I don't know where they're all from. I think you just get them also based on your... I'm pretty sure Saber said something about that and then I forgot like a dipshit. You get them as rewards.
That's so cute.
So remind some more artists who help with the game's cats. Yay!
That's
so
very
sweet. Nice. Mm-hmm.
I love the affinity developers have for putting
Ooh,
real
wings.
cats in games. We're putting my writer's old cat into Astral Guard.
Oh hell yeah, that's so nice. It's the rabbit that sits up on top of Queen of Fennec's head is Dusty, my old rabbit.
Yeah, I remember that. That's so cute.
I immortalized him as being Queen of Fennec's best friend.
Aww.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Skin has become inadequate interfacing with reality.
True. Ooh, that's a color.
Love Radon.
Charlie.
Charlie.
Why do they always call Charlie Brown Charlie Brown? They never call any of the other kids like by their full names. It's always only Charlie Brown. So rude.
They only call him Linus Van Pelt when he's in fucking trouble, you know?
Yeah.
Oh god,
For head not fun. That's awesome.
Good.
That's so good. Serval!
Yeah!
Sugoi serval sound. That's awesome. Water.
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 Liquid.
Liquid. Liquid. Skeleton. Fuck yeah, dude. Oh my god, I kind of want to use this one now instead of the trans colors.
That'd be so cool. Well, it's a pattern. It's not a color.
Oh, right. Of course, yes. Nice. Trans skeleton. Wait, it's Trans Bones. My OC from VR Chat is back.
Yes.
When I made a lot of when I made a lot of VR Chat avatars, I made a skeleton whose eyes are like pink and light blue, and and has a I don't remember if it's always or only when you're doing the emote. But anyway, has an emote where you can do a conga, and either always or during that emote has a flag on the back that is that's like a trans flag that like follows behind you in like a trail. And can also put down a trans flag banner on the map, and it just stays there.
So cool.
It's one of my favorite avatars. I know that like it's one that's not like to me personally, so like people can just get it, and sometimes I know that people just see it around.
That's awesome.
Oh, all right.
I think this is a character that actually exists. The Alico mask.
I would be surprised. Okay, so wings. That's cute. Mondre. Oh, nice.
Budget VR.
Could you use this for VR somehow? Because there are programs to do VR with non-VR games. Could you use that with this somehow? I imagine you could.
That'd be cool.
I would think so. Third eye. Ooh, whoa. Is that? Yeah, that's doing something. Oh, whoa.
Whoa.
Whoa. That's not disorienting at all. Oh my god. Oh, okay, I'm gonna get nauseous if I keep that up. Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the joke ones.
Yay. That's awesome. Long error. Ooh.
Oh, class ended. Fuck yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay. Let's see.
The 20XX glasses.
Very good. It's a tie. It's cute.
No hat.
Oh, wait, look.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
That's
Man,
awesome.
you're a fucking genius. These are great.
You're the fucking best, dude. So good. All right. Oh, it even changes the...
Oh, that's so cool. Ah!
Oh, wait, does it just make it... Okay, it makes it smaller and bigger. That's very
so
good.
Fun. That's so fun. Everything you make is cool.
That's so cool. It's gonna do it with the propeller cap still. There's Mr. Darcy. So Cotton Candy was the trans one, but since the skeleton only has 2 colors, I think we'll go with Mr. Darcy, so we can be skeleton.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can start showing you some fun stuff since you don't want to start the next world.
Sure.
So fun fact: if you get far enough away from the Eternal September, the music changes.
Oh, let's find out. I'm gonna fall asleep to this.
If there was like an hour loop of the Eternal September track, I would absolutely fall asleep to it every night.
That's really nice.
Yeah. Man, the Eternal September kind of reminds me of the ship in Mario Galaxy.
A little bit, I can see it.
The observatory, yeah. There we go.
Yeah, the observatory. Whoa! Whoa!
Oh!
Whoa! Whoa!
Oh, I'm glad we're discovering this.
This is gonna... Oh. No, that does not just take me back to the ship, huh?
Nope. Check it out.
Hello, single plane with a crazy texture on it. Hello. Oh, talk. Oh god. Oh god.
Hello? I mean, hello? Is there something there?
Hello, is anybody out there?
Hello? But...
Oh my
Holy
god!
fuck! Oh my god, it's a big cat!
Oh my god, it's God! Jesus fucking Christ, dude!
Oh, I'm so glad we're seeing this.
Ceiling cat. Oh my god.
Ceiling cat.
I've
watching.
been.
Oh, sorry.
I know you can do it. Go for it.
I've been watching you.
Oh!
What are you?
He comes down only to scream again.
Fear? That is unlike you, Happy. Are you a scaredy cat?
Continue screaming! Oh my god! This is so good.
No!
Good.
So, who are you?
How to explain? I am a lot of things to a lot of people. A shadow in the corner of your eye, the bane of plagues, a bad omen, a moment of relaxation in a ray of sunlight, a figure crouching in the forest, a god, a friend.
Why are you in the ceiling?
That I am happy. I am peeking down through the ceiling of your plane, from the astral to the aether. You can call me the ceiling cat.
This is so fucking fun.
It's peak. It's peak.
It's so good.
Hello, ceiling cat.
Hello, Happy.
Saber, are you seeing this? Saber?
I'm afraid you can't communicate with the mortals this far into the aether. Who is this Saber?
Didn't you say you were a god or something? Why can't you talk to the users?
User? Is this the etheric word for those from the physical plane? Is it because they use you?
The icon is like inquisitive.
Oh, why are you asking questions? Don't you have answers for me?
It's not easy being an astral being, you know. We're 2 planes removed from anything interesting to watch. Imagine.
That's so real.
Yeah, that's really good.
Imagine if you wanted to watch a movie, but the only way you could experience it was secondhand from some dude explaining the plot to you who watched it like a month ago. It's infuriating. Finally, the mortals have figured out how to get to the aether at least, but it took them ages.
If you only want to watch the users, then why are you watching me?
Because, Happy, you're playing a key role to determine the fate of the aether.
Oh, cool.
Yes, very. If you're ever lost or confused, come find me again. I can't spoil much, but I can help you land on your feet.
I always land on my feet. I'm a kitty cat.
Yes, that's me. I'm the one doing that.
Oh my god, that's so good.
That's awesome.
That's so cute.
Good luck, Happy. I'll be watching.
Just like Flappy, Happy is made to be loved.
I love that. That's so nice. Okay, let's see if they have anything else to say.
Venture forth, Happy. I'll be watching, like I said already.
Okay,
So
bye-bye.
fun fact, you can go out of bounds on every single map in the game, and Ceiling Cat will have something new to say.
Well, then we have to do that now.
Yeah.
How do I
it's
leave?
really cool. I found, just go far enough to have an exit.
Well,
Oh, you know what? That's a new one. I don't know if I've had that happen before.
help me! Papa Ceiling Cat, what do I do? Help! Is anybody out there? Hello? Mr. President!
Sorry, this has never happened to me. I can always exit.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nope.
I can do it! Yeah!
Well,
okay.
yay!
Brute force!
That's awesome. Yeah, I discovered Ceiling Cat by accident when I was moving in Animois Station. Because one of the ledges is like just far enough that you hit the boundary of the area. And I was like, oh shit, oh fuck. Hey, we did part A. Let's go.
We did it. I also did it kind of by accident, which has been like, I'm just gonna keep going.
Yeah.
See if the music changes more.
Yeah, I was secretly hoping, I hope Zoe goes further so that she can like naturally see the Ceiling Cat.
And that is what happened.
Ceiling Cat, what's happening? Why can't I leave?
I don't know.
Scary.
That's scary. I'm really
I love
scared,
Ceiling
Happy.
Yeah. Once again, a fucking peak character. Such good dialogue. I always land on my feet.
That's me.
It's so comforting knowing that Ceiling Cat's got your back. It's like genuinely pleasant.
No, really though.
Like whatever happens, Happy is loved by Ceiling Cat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of obsessed with the idea of like a little guy who was made to be loved, and that's his whole thing. It's kind of awesome.
It's true. It's true. There's do you know the Something About series?
I think I recall. Wait, are those copycat stickers up there? That's so cute. I never noticed that.
Oh,
yay! Cute. It's like a series by Terminal Montage, who.
Oh yeah. Terminal Montage.
Yeah,
I
so
recall.
the Kirby in that is Christian, first of all, but it's
I know that.
and it's so delightful because it's never really like used to shit on Christianity. It's just to be like, you know, this is how to be a good Christian who likes people.
Yeah,
which is very nice. But specifically, like, Kirby has like a moment where he meets God, and God goes,
You are my most favorite creation.
I'm just
awesome.
thinking about that moment.
That's basically what happened to Happy. It was like, you are an awesome little guy.
I love you. Good luck. I will be watching because you're so awesome.
Okay, thank you. I love. I'm so obsessed with the voice you gave for Happy because now I can only read Happy's lines. I was playing a little bit of it and I was like, I can't not hear Zoe's voice for Happy.
I've done this. I'm real now. Yay!
Also, little guy just made to be loved, just like his U-bots. That's
so true.
That's honestly kind of true. The U-bots were made specifically just because I wanted to be close to you guys, because I wanted to have better interaction with you guys.
Aww.
Yeah.
I am.
And it makes you guys look a little cute, because it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the Weenops, the little beast that I am, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Or, these little guys. I made them. I made a bunch of them for my friends for when they're on my friend Morgana's stream. And like the current like lore joke is that they're actually all little familiars that she cooked up in a cauldron.
Oh, that's
so they're all
adorable.
little buddies.
That's so cute. I love that.
Thank you.
I love the lore of the U-bots. It's just like, yes, me and the other queens might be stuck in this virtual realm, but we've made robots, like virtual robots, for the viewers to connect with, so they can control them. But keeping the connection open, we don't have the processing power for that, so we're borrowing brain power from the users, which means that they have less brain power as U-bots. So they're just kind of little silly dudes.
Little silly dudes. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go find some more fun stuff before we head out?
If you have anything else.
Yes, actually, I think so.
Oh.
So there's the 2 Ceiling Cat interactions, the 2 worlds we've been in, and there's some new FAQ stuff, I think.
Oh yes, of course.
Because you found those interactables.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, also, fun thing. Okay, so turn to face Happy, and go into the ship.
Oh.
Go what?
Go into the ship while you're looking at Happy's face.
Oh. Okay, I'll
I
go
think you
out.
can do it by you can do it in the customization menu. It'll keep like the camera on you.
Oh, alright, of course.
There we go.
Ooh, haha, steering is hard.
Steering is hard. Like this.
Okay, we can do
You
it.
can do it. You can do it. So, so fun fact about Happy's eyes, they get bigger when they're in dark spaces.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so if you go out of the ship, you can see them shrink. If we find the exit.
If we ever find the exit. I do already see them grow and shrink, though. Yeah!
Isn't that cool?
Such good attention to detail. I love that.
It's such a cool little detail. I love it so much.
Hell yeah. The rules.
Also, additional little fun thing. I know it's kind of spelled out in the game, but I do really like that the little like cat toy plushie is what Copycat is based on.
Oh yeah.
The one that you can find in the LRPA towers. So I've thought about this game a lot. Nobody else is talking about it, so I have to do all the like info dumping for the world.
And now you can input up at me and the viewers. I've given you an audience. You're welcome.
Yeah, we have a skeleton cat now. We got it from Bella Lugacha.
Yeah.
The really cool thing about Ceiling Cat is that she knows a lot more about like the world than Saber or
is
Happy.
Is Ceiling Cat a female character?
I actually don't know. I always read it with like a motherly voice because of the way that they act, but they're kind of like a god, so I assume they're genderless.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could also try a motherly voice next to Hello Key.
What Key?
Yay!
I think your god voice is funny. You can do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it's good to try out different things to see what works.
True.
I want to get the mythical girl thing. Bread! Oh.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
My favorite, yeah! My personal
Nice.
favorite hat is the saber glasses. Like short and sweet for those.
Ooh, nice. Can't wait to get those.
I think we can. Which one do you want to check out? Animal Station or the Null Space Castle?
I mean, we'll check it out both, I assume.
True.
Think about the fucking Smosh audio that you made. You made a horse comics version of.
Yeah.
True.
He was watching gay porn,
That's-
and who doesn't from time to time? True.
True. I love the face you give to Rainbow Dash there. It's so funny. True.
Thank you. I gotta do more horse comic animations. I really want to.
Mm-hmm.
My dream right now is to make one. I want to make a Peachy Keen comic or animation,
Hell yeah.
but the other is I want to do a Susan Taxpayer short if I can.
That'd be the best.
It would be the best.
Can I voice
Hello?
someone in him?
Yeah, go for it.
Hell yeah, cool. I want to voice Funny Orange.
Monday.
You can absolutely voice Monday.
Cool.
I would be honored. My favorite thing in dubs of the Funny Orange comic is seeing what people give Funny Orange as a voice.
I assume it's a lot of like text to speech and stuff.
It's text to speech. It's the voice you just did for it. One time somebody like chopped up a bunch of different vocal samples to make it say Monday, which is really cool.
Uh-huh.
I like it a lot.
Monday.
I'm delighted that people. Okay, a bunch of people bought the Monday sticker without
Hell yeah.
realizing that it was misspelled, which is like the funniest thing in the world to me. Like that's the whole joke, right?
That's the point. It's his Monday.
It's just Monday. My favorite thing with that sticker though was my roommate has it on her laptop, right?
Uh-huh.
And she's she's going to work and like somebody's like, oh, I know that sticker. That person's so funny. Do you know about them?
Do you know about them?
I live with her.
Wait, that's like already like the fact that they were just able to say like I live with them is really funny, but also just do you know about them? Well,
They have the sticker.
probably,
Yeah, she's got it on her laptop. Yeah, it's happened a couple times. People have been like, "Oh my God, you have a sticker from Punk and the artist. How do you know her? Oh well, I'm her friend in real life." Oh.
That's so funny. Okay, I'm gonna try to motherly voice and we'll see how it goes. Hey! Hello, Happy. Your travels have taken you far. The users call that place null space, but it isn't empty at all. Stray thoughts, forgotten memories, discarded ideas, they sprinkle the land in a fine dark sand. I wonder what other things the users bury there. Hey! This is the same dialogue. I said this stuff already.
Yeah, Happy, you know this already.
Stop talking to me. Go do something else.
Okay. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
What do we like more? I do think. Sorry, go on.
You say your thing first.
I was gonna say I do think the motherly voice, considering like Ceiling Cat is a very comforting presence, I feel like the motherly voice is more fitting. But I think the deeper voice is funnier.
I think no reason not to switch around if you feel like it.
I guess that's true.
Yeah. This is the internet. You can do whatever you want.
That's true. That's true. But
I
what
think
do you-
for some scenes, I think you should take on the motherly voice. But I think if you for like the whatever scenes, I think you could have fun with it.
The deeper voice is more fitting of the original meme.
Like the
Is it?
2007 one.
Live in the future.
The future.
The future.
Yeah, honestly, it's up to you. There's some kind of emotional moments with Stealing Cat, so do with that what you will, essentially.
I think I'll do the Molly voice because I imagine there'll be. I feel like it's easier to have a character where it's fun to give them like a deep booming voice than a soft motherly voice like that. So I'll get more opportunities to do the deep voice.
There is a character that I would love to voice if you'd be okay with it.
Oh, of course.
when we get to her name is Te, and I think it's
Te?
really good. It's Te.
Like T-E-H?
T3H.
Even better.
Even better. You're gonna love where that character is from. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but next
please
stream we
don't.
do, you're gonna have an incredible time.
I'm very excited now.
Yeah. Did you go to the new world? I think you did.
Oh wait, did I just go? Fuck.
I think you did. Yeah.
Damn it.
You can get a peek of it for next week. I
Yeah, I
suppose.
guess it's true. Gross. Why is this place completely infested with pop-ups? Looks like the site is down. I thought Commodore would at least keep it up for posterity.
I can see 2 circuits. If I complete them, can you reactivate the site?
You're getting the hang of this, Cat. If the pop-ups give you trouble, you can probably boost or barrel roll through them, through to scatter them. Good luck, have fun.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
That's for next week.
I don't want to do that yet.
Yeah, I really like this area. You'll see why next week, but it's one of the coolest places I think conceptually.
Exciting.
My favorite still remains Anawa though, because the visuals are so fucking good.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it again.
If I could like live here, I would.
Oh my god.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. It just looks so
Anawa
fucking
Station.
good.
My beloved. I wish more
I
sites
die.
look like this. It's so cool. Like with the windmills and the like little cities. It's so good.
Really, really, really good.
Oi! Look, it's
Going
Halo.
down to it, I actually don't know. It's
Halo.
Do I have anything else in the stuff to show Zoe folder?
You
I
actually made a folder. That's amazing.
I sent myself a message because I was rewatching the parts that I missed, and I was like, "Here's what I need to show her."
I really appreciate your dedication.
No problem. I want to make sure you see all the cool stuff that I did, so that you have the full experience.
Thank you.
Hello, Mama.
Since, you have to balance streaming with everything else. So.
That's fair. It is nice when the co-hosts help you keep on top on things and stuff.
Yippee!
Hello again.
Hello, Happy. I see you've arrived from the place they call Anemoy. There are all sorts of interesting pieces of data there for you to meet. Some you can even talk to. Before the users, the data of the physical world was scattered in this plane like flakes of snow. Blinding particles of noise, as unpredictable as the weather. Then the users started to see patterns. As they learned, they built structures and systems. They categorized. They sorted. Sometimes the data is still too overwhelming. They start to tune it out. However, there's always a chance to find a signal in the noise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but we've been over this. I only say one thing.
Yeah, it's only once per world. There's a lot of places to go, Happy.
Okay, see you later.
See you later, Happy. Bye.
I love
Oh,
you.
sorry, I have the hiccup.
God damn it.
One sec.
No, that's okay.
Okay, I think I'm good. I never get hiccups, so the trade-off is that I have the worst, most toad-like hiccups known to man.
Okay. But Punkage, you're not good. You're great.
Oh, I think you. That's everything I got to show so far. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Now stream over. See ya.
I just go okay, and then I stop the stream. Anyway, first things first before I forget. The raid message was What was it again? This game is toys, I think, right?
This game is toys.
This
Should
game
we
is
add the
toys.
U in toys.
Yeah, we should. Well, would that be confusing to people?
I feel like you can interpret toys.
Sure.
This game is toys.
With it's like this with 3 mouth. Because that's important.
Yeah, it's deeply important.
It's so important. All right, so wow, I love this game. It's so good. I'm having a lot of fun. Thank you very much, Punkit, for showing it to me and stuff.
Why? Plug it. As a matter of fact, would you like to plug your stuff?
Wait, are we doing uwu or not?
No, I was just doing it for fun.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Punkit.
But now that you've said that they are gonna redeem it, though.
Oh, I need to go fast.
Go.
I make horse comics. You might have seen it around. I do general art. I love making comics. If you search me up on anything, right below the part where it says Punkit Controversies, I should have my websites, stuff like that. You can. I'm a game developer. I'm making a game called Astroguard. It's really cool. It has a Y2K aesthetic. And Susan Taxpayer.
Yeah. Susan takes by you. Keep talking, it's okay. I'm shielding you. I'm shielding you from the U-boats.
I think, fuck, I forgot my tweet of thought.
That's so weak.
I think we can.
Okay, cool. This game is like $25. I think you should buy it.
You should buy it.
I forget. I don't know if there's a sale going on. You should give James Go all your money because they made a game that is hardwired for me specifically. We both like it a lot.
So
You should
lot.
play it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it a
talk about
lot.
You should talk about it so that it's not just me talking about it.
I
Please,
agree,
God.
actually. We should all be talking about Kitten Burst all the time, I think.
Absolutely. Everybody should make fan art of Happy.
Yeah, and also of Bleppy.
Of Flappy, yeah. People should draw fan art of Flappy and Happy hanging out together.
Oh, that'd be so fun!
That'd be so cute, actually. They're sharing their toys.
They're sharing their toys. See?
Kirikat says, I bought this game for a friend for her birthday. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Nice. Yay.
That's awesome.
As for me, I will be back tomorrow, continuing Splatoon 3 side order, which is gay. So that's cool.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. the fucking anon hate I got the other day was so fucking funny.
It looked so baitish, but it wasn't. I don't
think it was.
It was real. It was just somebody was very mad about gay Splatoon.
Yeah, they were blaming me for it. It was very funny.
It's your fault that Pearl and Marina kissed. You promise?
Really? What else can I do with this power? Can I make them tea for tea?
Please?
Anyway, so
what do you mean make them? Look at them.
You're right. So yeah, I'll be doing that tomorrow. That'll be good. Dear Zoe, please make more girls in my video game skits. I am working on it. Every night I'm using my brain power to imagine it, and then it becomes real. I'm like Polocus from Rayman 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll make Susan Taxpayer kiss another girl at some point. I promise.
Yes.
It'll happen.
Who's it gonna be? Is it gonna be Frankie?
That is up for me to know and you to find out. So.
Okay, I love a mystery. Very excited.
Actually, if you beat Susan Taxpayer 3 times in a row on the hardest difficulty, and then you delete your save file, you can have seen where they give a little smooch on the cheek.
And then they explode, and then they're gone.
Forever.
Yeah. Anyways, that's tomorrow. Exclamation point links in chat to get a link to my little website that has all of my links there. You can figure it out from there, and you're smart and stuff. Discord is the best place to stay up to date with what I'm gonna do because you get you get notifications when I go live or have a schedule. But you don't have to worry about joining the whole community if you don't want to because you don't have that yet. All you have is a stream announcements channel and a channel explaining how to get into the full community if you want to, but no pressure whatsoever. Yeah, this was super fun. Let's go find a raid target. And I'm gonna post the raid message again as well. What was it again? This game is toys.
This game is toys, :3.
Yeah. There we go. So everybody copy that. We are going to raid. So many options. Oh, what do I choose? Yay. Oh, it's too hard. We'll go we'll go raid my friend Rococo, who is playing Content Warning, a game I still haven't checked out, but apparently it's very funny. With some friends. They are, was the title something about Brexit? Rocco is English for context. We are filming in Brixton. Never mind. But still, judging by that name, Rocco is English, just for context. Regardless. So yeah, hope you downloaded it when it was free. I did. No worries. I got it. So yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you've had a really good time. And we'll see you next time. Oh, and of course, assuming everything goes well, Pumpkin and I will be back with more Kitten Burst next Tuesday. Bye, everyone. Bye.